Have it. Oh, I know. Okay.
Right, good evening. This is unexpected, wasn't it? Right, welcome members, officers and guests to everyone watching at home tonight, perhaps on their screens for the first formal meeting of the council municipal year. Actually, I should say you may be seated, by the way. Sorry. I've got a year to practice this, right? So for those of you who don't know me and those who may be watching on the council's YouTube channel tonight, my name is Councillor Taylor. I'm the Deputy Mayor and I'll be chairing the meeting tonight in the absence of the Mayor of Ealing. Now, before the meeting formally begins, Reverend Dean Ayres, who's Associate Rector of Acton, St Mary's Church in Acton, will bless the meeting.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be with you as always. Let us pray. Loving Heavenly Father, source of all goodness and hope, we bring to you the work of this council. May we be attentive listeners and may our speech be temperate and considered. Where there are disagreements, may we listen to opposing points of view with humility and the knowledge that good disagreement strengthens democracy. We pray for all those in elected office. Strengthen their resolve to serve the people of this borough, to build a prosperous future for our communities while protecting the poor and vulnerable. We pray too for all officers and employees of this council, that with diligence and determination, they may enact the decisions made tonight. We pray for Her Majesty the Queen following the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, giving thanks for the way that the festivities brought our diverse communities together. Inspire us all to be a generous idea of Britishness that celebrates the gifts and contributions to all in our society. We give thanks for the work of the Ealing Race Relations Commission and pray that this council will take bold steps to reduce racial inequality so that all people of this borough may thrive. Empower this council, we pray, to take bold steps in tackling the climate crisis and ensuring that workers receive the London living wage. I'd like to close and bless this council with a prayer that is attributed to St. Francis Drake, Sir Francis Drake. He said, Disturb us, Lord, when we are too well pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have become true because we have dreamed too little, when we arrived safely because we sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wider seas, where storms will show your mastery, where losing sight of land, we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizons of our hopes and to push into the future in strength, courage, hope, and love. Amen.
Thank you, Dean. A few things I want to point out. One thing I do need to read out very quickly. Tonight's meeting will be broadcast live and a recording retained on the council's YouTube site. Therefore, I presume that everyone in the meeting consents to that happening. And if you do not consent to do this, you should leave the meeting now. No one's going. There are a number of councillors who will be joining us remotely tonight via Zoom, and those members will not be counted as formally being in attendance at the meeting for the purposes of Section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972. However, their virtual attendance will be recorded in the minutes under item 1. The members in attendance virtually will be able to speak at the meeting, but won't be able to take part in any votes. Now, first, a few housekeeping. Now, clearly, the mayor is not present tonight. So I ask members, all members here tonight, be a bit patient because we've had to work through some of this tonight. Let me thank Reverend Dean Ayres, who's now gone, stepping in at short notice. Our usual Democratic Service Officer is not here tonight, but we have Linda Zimmerman, everybody knows, very well qualified. And our Chief Executive is here tonight, at the end of, well, next to me, but will be his final meeting. And to my left is nobody. And this, as you know, is the first political meeting since the annual council. And I'm conscious that there are a number of many new members who are making their maiden speeches tonight for the first time. And by tradition, they will be heard in silence, so you won't be heckled if you're making a maiden speech tonight. Also say with COVID numbers rising, if anyone in the chamber feels uncomfortable or wants to wear a mask, please feel free to do so. And advice to my colleagues on the political side, don't text me in the middle of the meeting because I'll be ignoring your messages. And also breaking with tradition, I'm afraid the after meeting refreshments, no, I'm just joking. So with that out of the way, let's move on to the agenda, please, members. So for item 1, apologies for absence and attendance.
I've not received any.
Okay, just for new members, hopefully you will sign. There's normally is a book outside the council chamber. Is it not there? Okay, we'll have to assume everybody is here. Do we know who's actually online, by the way?
So online, you've got Councillor Steed, Summers, Jamu, Blacker, Dinser.
Thank you. All right, item 2, declaration of interest. Does anybody get any pecuniary interest to declare? Taking that as a no. Right, then we've got 2 sets of minutes to agree. First of all, the minutes held on 19th of April 2022. Can we approve these as a correct record? Thank you. And the minutes of the annual council meeting on 24th of May, can we agree those as an accurate record? Thank you very much. Mayor's announcements. We've got a few here. So first of all, we had the Jubilee Street parties, of course, and well done to everybody who attended the civic events and the countless street parties over the bank holiday weekend to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee of the Queen. Also, you will have noticed that the inclusive LGBTQIA+ flag, Google it if you don't know what it stands for, is flying proudly above the town hall. And remind everybody about the parade that's taking place in central London on the 2nd of July. This year will mark the 50th anniversary of the first Pride March in 1972. I don't know if there is an Indian contingent going, but to tie in with Pride Month, the West London Queer Project is hosting a number of events, many in Chiswick, including a show in the film Birdcage tomorrow evening. No one's interested. Armed Forces Day, which is on Saturday, 25th of June. I hope that many of you will be joining the Mayor on Saturday for the Armed Forces Day Parade. If you've not already done so, please confirm your attendance with the Mayor's office. Also, you may have received an email today about the annual civic mass at Ealing Abbey on Sunday, 3rd of July. So please respond to that as well. And finally, as I alluded earlier, to take this opportunity to say thank you to Interim Chief Executive Paul Martin here. Your input has been invaluable. I've got to read what it says here. It's been very much appreciated, Paul, and it is his last meeting, and I'm sure we wished him a prosperous and happy future moving forward. And I'm sure you'll be an asset wherever you go. Thank you. Right, that's enough for me. Item 5, petitions of members of the public. We have none. Petitions of members of the council. Do we have any? No. No, we do have 2 members, questions from members of the public, item 7. There are 2 members of the public here. So the first one I've got is Leonard Picardo. Cabinet members, you have 3 minutes to respond when they've asked the question.
Hi, good evening. My name's Leonard Picardo. I am a resident in the Walpole area in Ealing. And the topic that I wanted to talk about today was one of road safety on the stretch of road between Walpole Park and Lammas Park, so the south part of Colmington Road, it's between Lammas Park Road and Churchfield Road. First, I'd also like to thank Councillor Rye, who's come down to meet with the residents, has been heavily involved and had the idea to come here today, following the survey that we did, in which 80% of the residents responded individually, highlighting their concerns. And so now we'd like the council to help quantify these issues and respond on the basis of these results, which we have shared and happy to share further. You know, the specific issues are really around road safety, and we believe there's a high risk to children and elderly as they attempt to cross between Walpole and Lammas Park to enjoy the amenities. So the simple question is, how can the council help and work with local residents to minimise the volume and speed of traffic, and therefore improving the safety?
Thank you. Do you want to switch that?
Yeah.
Councillor Costigan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Picardo, for the question. And I've had a copy of the survey, so thank you very much for that, and some very interesting suggestions and responses from residents. I know that there is concern in the area about speeding and about the volume of traffic. I have had emails from other local residents there that I've responded to. Looking at kind of, I suppose, the data, because, you know, if you were looking at, say, speed cameras, for example, there's a requirement that there is, you know, safety data that backs that up. And we have looked at the data, and in the last 5 years, there's been one minor injury in the area of a motorcyclist. And there's been no other record of any injuries in the last 5 years. So on the basis of that, we wouldn't be able to, for example, get Transport for London to agree to speed cameras. But that's just one thing. And I totally understand that, you know, the feeling people have about safety is different to, you know, the kind of the data, and it's about that perception of safety. So we have made the whole of the borough a 20-mile-per-hour zone, which I'm sure that you're aware of. And, you know, that does have a deterrent effect and does calm down the traffic. However, we're unable to enforce that because that is the job of the police. We have asked, I wrote personally myself to the government to ask if they would give us the power to enforce 20-mile-per-hour zones. And I'm sad to say that the government minister, Baroness de Vere, I think it is, wrote back to me and said, no, we're not going to give you that power. And at the same time, they're not giving any more resources to the police to do it. So that's unfortunate. I know there is currently a pedestrian island or refuge there that some local residents would like to see made into a proper crossing. We have looked at that, and unfortunately, to make it a proper crossing, the rules mean that we'd have to move it, and it would not therefore be in the right place for people to cross. It's not on the current desire line. We also looked at speed bumps, and that is something that I think some of your residents had suggested. I must say, in other areas of the borough, I've got residents who hate speed bumps and want rid of them, so they are a bit of a Marmite thing, and we're very keen that we work with all of the local residents and don't just, you know, make a flash decision to put in something. So we're very happy to speak to local residents and see what would work for them. There's also, I think, a suggestion of building out a corner. We're happy to look at that suggestion, and we will be doing some speed and volume surveys that are starting in the next few weeks across the borough, in fact, but also in Colmington Road. And we'll use that data to look at whether we can do that. It'll all be part of our travel in Ealing charter, which is our new way of working on transport programs, where we work with local residents rather than telling local residents what to do. So we'll be working with local residents in these kind of areas. However, one of the issues we've got is we don't have the security of funding from the government. Transport for London funds these kinds of initiatives, and I'm afraid the funding runs out this Friday for Transport for London initiatives in Ealing, and we've had no word as to what will happen after Friday. So anything our colleagues on the opposite side of the chamber from the Conservative Party could do to get the government to fund Transport for London properly, and therefore fund us to do these kind of important safety work, would be really helpful. But we will be happy to work with you as part of our charter and looking at the ideas that have come up from residents. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to ask another question?
Yeah, just thanks for obviously sharing all the work that you have done and looked at, and that's appreciated. And I appreciate there's, you know, maybe limited amount of actual accidents, but, you know, you don't want to wait for someone to get killed or seriously hurt for there to be anything done. And I see daily with my own eyes, you know, and I've also almost been hit by a car myself. And so, you know, time frame wise, like what can we expect? Because there's a lot of people willing to give up their time to work with the council. So you tell us what is the process and time frame with which we can, you know, get things going.
Well, as I say, we're going to be starting the volume and speed monitoring in the next couple of weeks. So we'll need that in place for a few months in order to be able to properly assess the data. There's no point in doing it for a week because it could just be a blip that week. So that will take a few months to get that data together. Our travel in Ealing charter, we're currently just finishing off the engagement on that, and we hope to be able to bring it forward towards the end of the summer and into the beginning of the autumn. So that's when we will have that in place. Once we've got that in place, that gives us the blueprint to be able to work with local people on these kind of issues, so that, like I say, we can hear from everyone locally as to what they want. And it's a co-designed solution that we can get all of the local community behind. Thank you.
Is it, Mr. Deputy Mayor, is there any chance we could open the windows in here? It's extraordinarily hot.
Legal. I mean, if people, I think there's a thing. If people, I mean, if people want to take their jackets off, then okay, I'll let you. So we're going to bring the next speaker in. Sorry, can anyone else bring him in?
Mr. Mayor, can I also request that when you speak, please draw the mic towards your face so we can hear you more clearly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Marchek, you want to ask a question?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Good evening. As most of you probably know, I used to be a councillor a long time ago, which probably means why I'm more interested in this subject than the average council taxpayer in Ealing. I read reports of big increases in councillor allowances, leader allowances to rise by 20,000, increase about 70%. The cabinet members' allowances to rise by over 15,000, in effect more than doubling, although some of the increase won't take effect till next year. Now, these are the sorts of increases that other public sector workers aren't receiving. And I've often heard it said that council budgets are under great pressure. So it's hard to believe that money to fund allowances increases is easy to find. So I'd like to ask the question, given large increases in allowances for senior councillors have recently been approved, what will be the annual cost to council taxpayers of these increases, and what will we be getting for this?
Councillor Donnelly, you going to reply?
Welcome back to Councillor Barchak, who has temporarily boosted the number of Conservatives in the chamber. I don't know if this is going to be a habit in future meetings. The Lib Dems need to watch out in case they're trying to get 6-all by proxy. I'm going to address 2 points here. One is, what's the rationale? Why is it necessary to take a professional and sensible approach to allowances, an approach which is overdue? And I'll come to that second. And I think I'm amazed if Councillor Barchak hasn't read the independent report upon which our allowance structure is based, being a political animal. But I'm going to read, Mr. Mayor, some things from it, because I think they say things better than I can say it. The feedback we received, says the report, is that the workload and responsibility of councillors continues to increase. Their roles become more complex, and not only in the areas of social care and housing. The public expects a speedy response. It's now more difficult for councillors to deal with concerns as voters expect. The expectations of the public continue to rise. It continues to be challenging to recruit candidates generally, but also from a diverse background and of a high enough calibre who are prepared to stand for office as councillors. Councillor Barchak may know, the archetypal councillor in England is a white man called John in his early 60s. Not Steve, as it happens, but John. And I think he and I wouldn't want a situation in which the council chambers of the country only consisted of people who looked like he and I. Also, of course, the government in 2014 removed access to pension for councillors, which was very widely condemned. And the two parties opposite probably ought to think long and hard about having supported their parties in putting that into place. So we're looking to professionalise, and we need to professionalise. And you talked about how times are hard and other people don't receive money. Well, that's how we got in this situation in the first place, by councils, for good, understandable, but mistaken reasons, failing to address these issues with sufficient frequency. So there's been no significant increase in our allowances since 2006, a date that probably is well remembered by Councillor Barchak, since it was his first council meeting. He was appointed to the cabinet and voted himself the largest increase in allowances in the history of the borough. But I'll say one thing in particular. I think we can all agree where the professionalisation is most needed is in the position of leader. If we can agree anything, it is surely that in this day and age, a leader needs to be full-time. That was certainly the view of your group in 2006. So I think we're getting value for money. I think we need to address this now in a sensible, more frequent way to ensure that we keep pace with both inflation and the demands of the role.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Just to remind you, he's not called Councillor Barchak, just to let you know. Mr. Barchak, did you have a follow-up question?
Actually, I'll bypass Councillor Donnelly's comments, which I'm very grateful for, although I still don't know what the annual cost of council taxpayers will be of these increases. But my supplementary was, I'm sure Councillor Donnelly, like the rest of us, recognise the importance of democratic accountability. So would he agree that it would be a benefit to the electorate if at the next council elections, all political parties set out in their manifestos their proposed council allowance increases?
Councillor Donnelly.
Well, of course, it's a matter for incoming governing groups to decide what they want to put forward. And I leave that to each of the parties. If you want to know numbers, I think we're looking at an increase of 9%. That's which is roughly 10% over 16 years, to put it in context. 10% over 16 years. And we're looking at figures. The new increases bring the leaders' allowances to just about the point that you brought Jason Stacey's allowance in 2006, adjusted for inflation. And perhaps members would like to guess what, adjusted for inflation, the 2006 basic of 9,252 would be. Do you think it may be higher than the 12,014 we've now put in place?
Mr. Mayor, but can I object for a second, please?
You'd be
Mr.
right
Mayor,
to go
can I
on.
object?
Mr.
Barchuk is not on trial here.
It would be.
Can we-
Mr. Barchuk, ask for
Sorry,
figures.
hang
I'm
on,
giving you.
we all just calm down a second.
Mr. Figures.
Let Councillor Donnelly carry on.
The figure would be 15,764. So the level of decay in our allowances is that significant. We've fallen that far behind. It shouldn't have happened. There were good reasons that it happened, but we shouldn't allow it to happen again. I thank him for his interest.
Thank you, Mr. Barchett, for the questions. Okay, members, thank you. Right, we're going to go to next item 8. No more public questions. Questions from members of the council. So we have 40 minutes. So this will take us to 8:05 p.m. Can I just remind executive cabinet members, your response to the question shouldn't exceed 3 minutes, please. Supplementary questions that are asked must relate to the original question or from the answer given. And only 1 second supplementary question can be asked by a group other than the group that asked the question. It is up to the mayor to decide who can ask the second supplementary question. But I have been notified of at least one group's supplementary questions. I will be taking those. But anyway, the first question is Councillor Wesson to Councillor Mahfouz.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Can the portfolio holder provide an update on Ealing Council's progress so far on its commitments to provide 10,000 new well-paid jobs in the borough?
Thank you, Councillor Wesson. And firstly, I congratulate Councillor Wesson on his election and welcome him and all of the other wonderful new colleagues that we have around the chamber. It's great to see so many new faces filling the Labour benches this evening. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the fact that we have a record-breaking number of Labour councillors on these benches is testament to the fact that our pledges at those elections resonated with the issues faced by our residents across the borough. It showed that we were on their side. And as you'll be aware, we have ambitious plans and pledge to deliver 10,000 new well-paid jobs to Ealing. That's a pledge built on a foundation of already supporting over 2,000 residents into work in the year running up to the elections. It's one that looks to build on the fact that 40,000 businesses already call Ealing their home. We're now home to 5 Elizabeth Line stations, not to make us a commuter town, but to make our borough a destination. One that will make sure that our residents don't just survive, but to thrive in these increasingly difficult times. Our work Ealing actions are already well underway post the election victory. We have a series of in-person jobs fairs building on the one that we delivered just before the election, and we're wasting absolutely no time in delivering them. Our next one is tomorrow. Absolutely. So please tell your residents who are looking for work to come down to International House tomorrow, where they will be able to meet lots of employers and lots of jobs on offer. But that's not all. We are now present at the recently launched Ealing Youth Hub, supporting young people to get into those crucial first jobs around the corner at Ealing Green. We're working hard to make Park Royal a creative enterprise zone, here in the borough. We have our first ever Southall Business Expo at Southall Manor House, which in itself is going to become an incubator for small business startups. At Cabinet last week, members will have heard from my colleague, Councillor Manroe, about putting our powers where our mouth is in terms of facilitating new jobs in the borough with ambitious plans to bring offices, and that doesn't just mean offices, but jobs into our town centre. And we're not just stopping there. Sorry, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I've got a few more things to say. We know that there has been a greater need for funding for skills and training as the labour market changes and adapts to the impacts of COVID. So our Learn Ealing offer, therefore, is expanded and adapted to the needs of residents to empower them to learn new skills, trades and services that will give them the best tools to find good employment. Our commitment doesn't just end with helping residents find a job, but it is to find a good job with our recent accreditation to the Good Business Charter as a borough. Incredibly proud of achieving that. What that does is that says to everyone out there that we are holding ourselves to a high standard as a borough, and we are setting the bar, and we want other businesses to raise themselves to that bar of what it means to do good business here in our borough of Ealing with good, well-paid jobs. And we stand ready to deliver on the cut for over the coming 4 years on that pledge.
Thank you. That was 20 seconds over the 3 minutes. So just as a guideline to everybody else. So Councillor Weston, do you have a supplementary question?
I'm grateful to the portfolio holder for that answer. Can he also provide an update on how the council are working to help those who are digitally excluded access employment and training, please?
Thank you, Councillor Wesson. We know how important digital inclusion is for our residents, especially when it comes to searching for and securing well-paid jobs. That's why we have committed to provide laptops, connectivity and digital skills directly to unemployed residents who are actively seeking employment but are digitally excluded. We are delighted that those digitally excluded residents struggling with getting into work are now able to access a digital bundle, which includes that hardware, software and portable Wi-Fi for over 12 months of unlimited data to break down those serious barriers facing some of our residents who are so keen to get into work. Perhaps more importantly, alongside that package, we are hosting face-to-face sessions that will provide additional access to digital skills, training and employment support via the Council's Employment, Learning and Skills team. We're delighted to see Ealing Labour standing on the side of our residents in every possible way to support them getting into well-paid jobs at a time when the government is making no attempt to take control of the economic situation that we face.
Thank you, Councillor Mahfouz. I didn't see an indication for second supplementary, so I'm going to go to the next question. Second question is Councillor Ball to Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. What is the average waiting time on Ealing's dedicated council tax service number before speaking to a member of staff?
Thank you, Councillor Ball. We pledge to be an open, inclusive, transparent council with customer services at the core of this. The current average waiting times for the two lines currently dedicated to council tax inquiries are 5 minutes 20 seconds for the dedicated energy rebate line and 27 minutes 33 seconds for the general council tax line. The service is continually reviewing resources to ensure customers can access the support they need. As of 20th of June, the contact centres so far received an additional 2,100 calls regarding the energy rebate, and that's impacted on waiting times. Customers calling the contact centre and not wishing to wait, as I've said in answers to previous questions, are offered a callback, and we've returned 737 calls regarding council tax for this period in this way. This policy shifted the responsibility for tackling high energy bills from governments to councils, but we're doing our bit to deliver for residents. Officers dealing with council tax also take calls for housing benefits, give advice and information for other financial support available, and manage the portal helpline. All of these services are currently experiencing a high demand due to the cost of living crisis and a decade of Tory underfunding.
Thank you. Councillor Ball, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, yes, please. So 27 minutes is a lamentable figure, but it's the tip of the iceberg more broadly, looking at calls into various council services. While I understand that it's safer for many staff to continue to work from home, surely we have the technology to be able to divert calls to home so people can answer them from home. Why is the time taken to get through to officers in all departments far worse than it was pre-pandemic for our digitally excluded citizens?
Well, thank you. As I hope I tried to indicate, things are taking longer because there are more problems that people are seeking our support in dealing with and have been doing starting with the pandemic, starting with the decade of austerity, moving on to the pandemic. And of course, we have the cost of living crisis as the cherry on the cake. So there are no technology issues regarding home working and access to helpline. That's not the issue. And I think Councillor Ball probably be happy to give Councillor Ball a briefing as to how we're operating in 2022, as opposed to how we were in 2019. But that's not the problem. The problem is too many people seeking the support of scarce resources, including, just to repeat, the energy helpline, for which the energy rebate, for which we get a limited administration fee, but certainly not enough to pay for, train and deploy the kind of extra level of staff that we needed to get the numbers down across the piece here to the levels that we'd all want to see.
Thank you. Councillor Jessel, you've got a second supplementary question.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So my question is, how can residents in Ealing access support and advice from Ealing Council without needing to travel too far from their homes?
Thank you, Councillor Jessel, and welcome to this chamber. I hope the first of many happy and profitable contributions that you make here. It's our priority to ensure services are convenient and responsive to residents, to all residents, in fact. For some, that means making them accessible online, because more and more people are not only comfortable online, but prefer doing it that way. But we know for other people, nothing beats speaking to a person. That's why we pledged in our manifesto to launch new community hubs located within our 7 towns, supporting residents to access customer services at a one-stop shop that can support those most impacted by Tory cost of living crisis with the wraparound support only a council can give. And we're already delivering. The customer services and community engagement teams have been piloting projects to place advisors in libraries in Ealing, Northolt, Acton and Southall. So far, nearly 500 residents have spoken to our advisors in those libraries, and we're reviewing the offer to embed learning and ensure advisors are fully trained and supported to respond to the key issues. The project's also driving footfall into the libraries with all the added benefits that will come to our fantastic library service. It's the kind of innovative and resident-focused activity that all residents can expect for the next 4 years of Labour administration.
Thank you. I was just looking at the seating plan and I realised the one person out of place was the Deputy Mayor's consort who swapped round. Confused me. It's fine. Right, the next question I've got is Councillor Young to Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Is Mr. Clements, our incoming Chief Executive, being expected to repay the sum of £74,036, which is the amount, according to the Council's 2021 Statement of Accounts, that he received for loss of office when he suddenly left his previous post with the Ealing Council?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Young for the question and for Councillor Stafford for the guffawing, even though he knows better. As agreed by full council, this matter was referred to the Chief Officer panel for consideration. The Chief Officer panel has met, it has taken independent and detailed legal and professional advice and has agreed a way forwards. I must advise Councillor Young that these are confidential matters relating to the council's position as an employer. And I'm therefore very surprised that he, councillor with very, very long-standing service, is even asking this question at full council. But I can say that a cross-party panel agreed a way forward unanimously with the Leader of the Opposition.
Councillor Young, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. I'm wondering why the leader is not more willing to answer the question, given that it will be published in due course in the subsequent statement of accounts.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'm surprised because under the terms of the Standing Orders 9.5, it's explicitly against the rules of the council to ask questions here in this chamber that would necessitate the disclosure of confidential or exempt information. My surprise, it's so much more that Councillor Young, who has got long-standing service in this council, is seeking to break those rules, or indeed the fact that this question has even found its way onto our agenda. He knows very well that under the terms of the Code of Conduct for members, that a member must not disclose information given to you in confidence by anyone, or information acquired by you which you believe ought reasonably to be aware of is confidential in nature. And I can hear Councillor Stafford chuntering away. He knows very well that I refrained from referring him to the Standards Committee for doing the same. But I do say to Councillor Young, you are risking a referral to the Standards Committee. I certainly will not risk the same. He knows that this is a confidential matter relating to the council's role as an employer after I finish. He knows that this is a confidential matter relating to the council's role as an employer, just as Councillor Stafford did when he was a member of the Chief Officer's panel. It seems that the third party want to try and play, I'm afraid, dirty games by being reasonable and level-headed within Chief Officer appointment panel and Chief Officer panel meetings, where there is an understanding of confidentiality and the role of the employer as councillors, and then distort and twist the record in public by using confidential information to distort that objective and reasoned reality. I'm afraid it's not going very well for them in 10 Downing Street. And if this is going to be their tactic in the council chamber, I'm afraid it's going to serve them even worse than it did in advance of the last elections.
An explanation, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah,
I have referred to nothing which isn't in the public domain or was not already raised in this council chamber at the previous meeting. I had asked the leader to withdraw the comments that he made.
I mean, he's asking for me to reveal information which is within a confidential report of the Chief Officer's panel. I mean, if you don't believe that is soliciting a member of the cabinet to reveal confidential information from a confidential report, I don't know what it does constitute. So I'm happy to move on, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
I think we will move on. I think
I've already pointed out it will become public knowledge in due course.
Council Deputy Mayor has answered the question appropriately. There was a supplementary question.
Sorry, point of order, Mr. Mayor. I think we would need to receive clarification because the question that Councillor
Can we just
can I just hear my point of order, Mr. Mayor?
What's your point of order?
The question was submitted and approved by the head of legal. If the question was not appropriate or legal, can we get clarification from the head of legal as to whether this question should have been put in the first place? But that's what we need.
I had discretion to refuse the question. I chose not to exercise it on this occasion in the interest of transparency. However, the answer could have revealed confidential information which was not appropriate. So they could ask a question, but it doesn't mean that answer is not confidential.
Okay, thank you. All right, we did have a supplementary as Councillor Sidhu. Do you want to ask it, please?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Will the leader update the council on the progress we are making to ensure that Ealing is an open, transparent and inclusive council?
Thank you, Councillor Sidhu, and welcome to the Chamber. Not only are we an open, inclusive and transparent council, we are also changing our borough and we are changing our council to take on the spirit of hope, creativity and change for our residents, that the world can be better in their 7 towns. And we are putting that principle into practice. Already we have received 11,000 contributions to our engagement on the future of our borough through the Shaping Ealing consultation. We have received 4,000 responses to our consultation on the safety of women and girls in this borough. We've received over 2,000 contributions to our ongoing engagement over the future of Gurnell, and we have some fantastic sounding boards that continue to explore the future of that facility, visiting other leisure centres right across London and beyond to figure out what we do next. We've received 1,400 responses to our consultation on Warren Farm, setting out the council's ambition to both rewild and regrow, as well as deliver community sports facilities. And we have received over 500 responses to our travel in Ealing engagement. That is making sure that we tackle active travel in a way that will work for our residents and work with them to create a brilliant borough and to change it for the better.
Thank you. All right. The next question I've got is Councillor Nijar to Councillor Raza.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Can the portfolio holder update members on the progress of the Safer Ealing for Women survey?
Thank you, Councillor Nijar, and it's wonderful to see you here in this chamber as my councillor, so welcome. The Safer Ealing for Women survey concluded in February 2022 and saw nearly 4,000 responses from incredibly brave women across the borough who chose to speak to us and take part. We are now acting on their suggestions, and these will form the heart of our action plan to improve women's safety in Ealing. Our listening exercises included an interactive map which allowed women to pinpoint the areas they believed needed reviewing, and a series of focus groups that provided safe, open, inclusive space for women to come together and share their experiences and their insights. This feedback has provided a vast amount of data and insight that the team have been working to process and identify the key pieces of learning, both in relation to the perception of the respondents around their safety and their wider concerns around behaviours. We also are considering geographical data and matching this with the comments made to gain a fuller picture of our borough. The report is being brought to Cabinet in September, and it will detail the results of our listening exercise in full. I've also started working with officers on ensuring that the listening exercises are reflected in our 4-year VORG strategy and the wider REC findings. The exercise extended far beyond what the Liberal Democrats included in their manifesto pledges and what the Conservatives failed altogether to acknowledge in their handful of ill-conceived sentences. In the Ealing Labour's manifesto, however, we committed to £1 million to improve women's safety as part of the £13 million we pledged to fight crime and antisocial behaviour. Unlike the opposition, Ealing Labour have a clear plan to improve women's safety across the borough and shape a safer Ealing for everyone.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Ross, I was taking a picture then. Did you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Councillor Raza. Could you also please update members on how Ealing Council are engaging with partner organisations following the results of the survey?
Thank you. Ealing Council has worked closely with our partners, including third sector colleagues, throughout the listening exercises process, which have begun the process of sharing our learning with these partners. As we begin to share and interpret what we've learnt from the survey, our goal is to remain a critical friend in our partner agencies such as the police, so that we can ensure that they are held accountable to their commitments to improve safety of women in Ealing, and also always acting in the best interests of our residents. Through the Safer Ealing Partnership, a partnership linking multiple agencies together, such as the West Area Basic Command Unit, the London Fire Brigade, and the Safer Communities team, we engage in two-way dialogues with multiple partner agencies regarding resident safety. We have shared our initial findings with the Safer Ealing Partnership Board, who have been very receptive, and we will continue to work together as we have highlighted the areas of improvement across the multiple agencies. We've also engaged the police throughout the process of creating our report on women's safety of our findings with the borough commander. The local police in Ealing have recently established the walk and talk, which allows women and girls to feel who feel vulnerable and unsafe to highlight those areas to their local teams, and they can walk with the police directly. We also understand that the issues around women's safety are far-reaching and education is vital. So we're engaging with schools and investing in programs to educate young people about gender equality. Our role as a Labour administration is to drive improvement in the public, for the public, and to be a critical friend that enables the voices and concerns of the public to be heard, acknowledged, and acted on. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't see an indication for a second supplementary question, so I'm going to go to question 5. Councillor Malcolm to Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Deputy Mr. Mayor. A number of residents have contacted me trying to pay for Ealing visitors parking via the pay by phone system using a variety of technologies, but sadly they get stuck at the payment page. This has happened over the past couple of weeks that I can detect. I have asked for questions on this, but so far I've received very little. I still haven't received the answers from that. So how many people have been affected to date that you know of with these issues?
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. The rate of successful transactions since the 1st of June has varied between 91.
Join the meeting.
Must have known I was starting. I'll start again, shall I? Popular demand. The rate of successful transactions since the 1st of June has varied between 91% and 98%. And the issue that Councillor Malcolm refers to has affected a tiny minority of customers. Pay by phone has experienced issues receiving payment from a minority of customers due to problems with a third-party payment vendor. Pay by phone is currently working on a solution to this issue with the said vendor. And we're liaising with Pay by Phone to establish what can be done to assist customers who are attempting to purchase a parking product without success. However, as far as we know, no affected customer has been issued with a ticket due to being unable to pay, and there are alternative methods advertised at the parking locations, including a payment line. I'm aware that Councillor Malcolm's raised this issue with officers directly, and they've informed him they are aware of the issue. I'm not, to be honest, sure what he's hoping to gain by raising it again here today.
I'm raising it because I still haven't received an answer about 2 weeks after I initially raised it, and that is the point of asking yourself this question. So thank you for the answer that you've given me there. 91% as a low mark doesn't appear to be that high when you're talking about a transactional system. Given that the council has had a number of IT issues in the past that cause service issues, to be open and transparent, will you issue a guarantee that when customers are facing IT systems that they break down like this, will all councillors be contacted so that we can better advise residents on what to do while systems are brought back online, whether they take weeks or more?
That seemed quite a broad-based, wide-ranging commitment to seek. My instinct is that wouldn't be an appropriate way to respond to as yet unknown problems with as yet undefined systems. Happy to consider issues on a case-by-case basis. I think colleagues get quite enough emails without their inboxes being flooded with notional potential problems with systems, but I'll bear these things in mind for the future.
Yeah, Councillor Khan, you have a supplementary second.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Can the portfolio holder please update members on how Ealing Labour is making improvements to the council online services, please? Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome back in this case to Councillor Khan, who's come back rather more speedily than I did. So I hope you have the same amount of fun that I've had. We're actively working to ensure that all residents can access council services as easily and conveniently as possible, which means moving over as much as possible to a digital world while guaranteeing those who struggle to get online have all the support they need, as we previously outlined. During COVID-19, our services adapted rapidly to supporting residents online. It's important we don't lose this responsiveness and adaptability. Officers are constantly investigating how services can be moved online and monitoring take-up and feedback to ensure this is working for residents. We'll be reviewing our customer strategies this year, and we'll put accessibility and responsiveness at the heart of that, so that while we continue to move our services online, giving residents the option to resolve their query however works for them remains part of our offering.
Thank you. The next question, question 6, is from Councillor Mohammed to Councillor Elwall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oops. Apologies. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Wishful thinking, eh? Can the portfolio holder update members on Ealing Council progress on the Broadway Living Housing Delivery Scheme and our commitment to delivering genuinely affordable homes? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mohammed, and welcome to the Chamber. Following the Labour administration successfully delivering over 2,500 genuinely affordable homes during the last council term, we went further in our ambition this year and pledged in our manifesto to deliver 4,000 new and safe, genuinely affordable homes over the next council term, and that's despite massive cuts to our funding over the past decade or more. Deputy Mayor, I'm pleased to confirm that we are making excellent progress on this. I recently met with officers to discuss the progress of Broadway Living's Tranche 2 schemes that will be delivering 366 genuinely affordable homes towards our manifesto target of 4,000 during this administrative term. And at Cabinet last week, we progressed schemes at Parkview Road and the former Northolt Grange Community Centre sites. We're also forecast to start on site on 994 genuinely affordable homes by March 2023, and expecting a surge of new homes to start on site between March 23 and 2026. And I have to state, these are much needed homes in a borough where only 10% of homes are genuinely affordable to our residents. And it's also probably worth remembering that in 2010, both parties, our opposition parties, formed the coalition government that replaced the social rate grant with affordable housing grant. And the Tory definition of affordable housing at that point was 80% of market rent, which is definitely unaffordable to most people in this borough. It's also probably worth remembering that when the Tories were in power last in Ealing, they weren't building council housing. They were relying on housing associations and the private sector, and they were letting developers away with developments with only 10% genuinely affordable homes. I look forward to updating members regularly on our progress as we're building more new, safe, genuinely affordable homes that we all know are so desperately needed in Ealing.
Do you have a second supplement? Sorry, a supplementary question.
Yes. Thank you for your feedback, Councillor Wall. Can you update us on Ealing Council progress on our commitment to reducing the number of people in bed and breakfast accommodation?
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. I'm very pleased to confirm that Ealing Council were recently successful in obtaining an application for up to 3.25 million from our Mayor's GLA Right to Buy Back Fund to acquire 50 properties that will become part of our temporary accommodation stock. Last week at Cabinet, I brought a report to obtain permission to enter into a grant agreement with the GLA to secure this funding. We will be securing funding under the temporary accommodation route for 25 properties to be acquired under the Temporary Accommodations Acquisitions Framework for 21-22. And we've also secured funding for a further 25 properties that will be subject to completion in March 2023. As members will know, Ealing Council has a huge number of people on our housing waiting list, and many people are having to live in temporary accommodation or bed and breakfast accommodation. Therefore, obtaining this grant is excellent news, as it means that we will be able to greatly increase our temporary accommodation stock, which will help us deliver our manifesto commitment of reducing the number of families in bed and breakfast accommodation. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I didn't see an indication of a second supplementary, so I will go to the last question then. It's Councillor Kingston, Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Can the portfolio holder outline the projected impact of rising inflation costs on Ealing Council's ability to deliver services?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kingston, and welcome to you on an evening of welcomes. Again, I hope this is the first of many fruitful and enjoyable contributions you make in this chamber. It's difficult to overstate how difficult inflation and the cost of living crises are for the council and its residents. The government, sadly, has so far entirely failed to come up with any coherent plan for ensuring we're able to continue to support residents and businesses. We're feeling the impact across the full range of council services, construction of affordable housing, school transport for SEN children, adult social care, and of course, the impact on all of our staff and contractors. This after 2 years of COVID and over 10 years of Tory austerity. Yet the government continues to refuse to fund local authorities in any sufficient or sustainable way. Officers have already set aside 1.2 million of contract inflation and 3.5 million of pay inflation as part of the 22-23 budget that the council agreed. But we are facing enormous uncertainty. Double-digit inflation is a new and frankly quite terrifying prospect. We knew before the election we'd be forced to take difficult decisions, which is why we set aside millions in our budget for contingency. The parties opposite both criticised us at the time, but if we hadn't, we'd be in a worse position now than we are. But the crisis is also highlighting how right we were to put climate action at the heart of our manifesto. One of the most significant drivers of inflation is, as we know, the energy crisis. Our programmes being driven by Councillor Costigan to move community buildings and social housing away from polluting energy sources are more important than ever. And we're doing as much as we possibly can to curb Ealing's contribution to the climate crisis.
Thank you, Councillor Kingston. Supplementary.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. How is Ealing Council stepping up to support residents amid the cost of living crisis?
Thank you, Councillor Kingston. I'm proud that Ealing has one of the most generous council tax support schemes in the country, one of the few to offer a 100% discount to those who need it most. But we've pledged to go even further. We promised in the manifesto to expand the scheme, and we will be bringing forward proposals for consultation to ensure we're doing as much as we can by the next financial year. But we know we need to act now. Our Household Support Fund is standing out from a number of other local authorities, as has been highlighted in a recent article in Schools Week. We appear to be more generous and more clearly focused in who we want to support as part of the scheme, including supporting those who are on free school meals and those on benefits with preschool children. Almost 15,000 £15 vouchers have been issued to families so far. This summer, we'll also be supporting care leavers as well as those in the other key groups. We're working to issue payments of £103 to eligible pensioners who will, in due course, receive letters from the post office to come into the local branch and pick up the funds. We've also put on extra staff to the call centre to answer queries related to the Household Support Fund. We will monitor redemption rates of the post office awards and proactively call customers who don't redeem their awards after 2 weeks from the receipt of the letter. As with the free school meals during the pandemic, the Ealing Council stepping up to support our residents where the government is failing.
Thank you. Councillor Stafford, you've got the second supplementary question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And as the Lib Dems seem to have abrogated their responsibility to ask any questions, I thought I'd make one up on the hoof. Does the portfolio holder really genuinely believe, given the question that he's rightly said about inflation and the cost of living that all residents in this borough are going to face, does he genuinely believe that residents in this borough will welcome the first act of this administration to vote themselves an inflation-busting pay rise? Does he genuinely believe they'd welcome that?
Well, Councillor Stafford has a remarkably poor memory, because the first act of this administration was in the special May cabinet meeting to vote through a wide range of investment measures on a whole range of issues, starting and most centrally with our approach to climate. Now, he may not perhaps anymore take an interest in what happens at cabinet. I don't know, you know. We miss him, but he's very welcome to pop along. But if he cares to examine the minutes of the May cabinet meeting, he'll discover that very far from our first thoughts and decisions were around our own remuneration.
Okay, thank you, everybody. That's the end of questions. We did really well to get there on time. Just a quirk of geography here. I think most of the questions came from that side to people on that side. So just to let you know. So, but anyway, well done. So we've got, right, we've got two motions coming on. Just to let you know, in terms of number of speakers, the second motion has a lot more speakers. So I'll bear that in mind in terms of how much time we allocate to the first debate. So the first one is opposition motion for debate. And I'll call on Councillor Malcolm to move the opposition motion.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Let me first of all welcome you in your new role, although it seems that you're a year early than we expected. I also welcome those councillors around the chamber who are going to make their maiden speeches tonight and in the coming months, as we have more meetings every couple of months. Let me first add to Councillor Mason that as the main opposition party in Ealing now, we will questionise, scrutinise and challenge where the problems exist. And one of the problems was a few weeks ago on housing repairs, which is quite a serious report, but where we agree, and some of the cabinet papers we saw a month ago, we do agree that's what Ealing needs. We're happy to go ahead with those, but we will ask questions on that. So before the election, there was a clear voice of opinion that people were being ignored. They were not being listened to. This motion comes from the recent local elections where the support for the Lib Dems increased, our votes increased. A lot of our policies that we talked about to people were ones that people actually wanted enacted as a change in council policies. Like Labour, we do want to see a large number of chargers for electric vehicles to help on the environment, but we haven't seen so far real details about how this will be rolled out. We've seen the volume, but not the locations and not the types. And we need to see more than that, because some of these chargers cost a huge amount more than others for those who are currently in this situation where the cost of living crisis is affecting them. So we want to make sure people around the borough do have a fair deal on that. On street lighting, it was way back, and I think the portfolio holder, she referred to this subtly half an hour ago, that way back in March 2021, the Lib Dems conducted a survey when there was an attempted murder in Southfield. Luckily, that person was put away for 10 years, but light dimming and the lack of police patrols were the two things that came from that. And I think with so many new councillors in this chamber, I think it's only right that the council takes on board what it got in its borough-wide consultation, but it also then needs in the next couple of months to consult ward councillors around the whole borough to check with new councillors which roads they are getting feedback that they need improving. Also, very recently we saw, and I know Deirdre likes to raise this, it isn't just in Southfield where there are Councillor Costigan. I know that she likes me to talk about trees, so I didn't want to fail on this occasion. But we now not just have one contractor or two contractors, we have a third contractor is now dealing with trees in Southfield, but it isn't just Southfield that is having problems. Councillor Athena Zizimos will talk about Hanger Hill as well. And it's woeful that the council cannot really adequately set up contracts with third parties where they're allowed essentially to get away with not doing the job that they're meant to be doing. Residents are paying council taxes. Sometimes they're paying them at a higher rate than they wish, but they deserve clean streets, safe streets, and their trees to be maintained correctly. Lastly, after the election, there was an emergency cabinet meeting where there were two items. One was the many measures which almost all parties probably wouldn't disagree with, the spending of money on things that will help the environment. And we welcomed that. And I think all sides welcomed that. But there was a confidential report that related to how the housing repairs and housing backlogs have got to such an extent where there were many concerns there. It was confidential for a reason. I'm not going to reveal all of those details, but the paper gives a good flavour for that. It was also noted that the council self-reported itself, the right thing to do, but it did so after the election and not before the election. And therefore, the timing of this didn't appear to be very...
Can you just be careful, Councillor Malcolm?
Okay. So Mr. Deputy Mayor, the report was not confidential. It was on the public record. It was discussed by Cabinet in open discussion with the public watching.
Okay, there were appendices that were confidential, but the actual report to Cabinet wasn't. I think that's the correct position. There was clearly a need to ensure that something like OSC in the future can monitor these situations. We don't want to be going backwards in the future when this backlog of inspections and repairs are finally done. And it's going to take up to a year for these to be done. There are many areas of risk which tenants may suffer from because of these, and they include fire, gas, electricity, Legionella and asbestos. These are not small issues, and there are many tens of thousands of tenants and properties that we have to be concerned about. So the Liberal Democrats say that tenants have been let down over recent years on this issue, and the council has now gone the right way, but we need to make sure that through the OSC committee, we can make sure it doesn't happen again. I'll finish there, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I'll allow others to speak on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. All right, I've got the seconder who's going to make the speech, Councillor Zizimos. Is that how I pronounce it?
Dina, so that's fine. You should see what my maiden name is like if you can't say Zizimos. Anyway, so thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, for giving me this opportunity to speak. And it is my maiden speech that everyone should be really nice to me. I've been guaranteed that everyone's going to be really nice to me. That's what Gary Malcolm said to me. He goes, "They're all nice to you, don't worry." So I'm not going to worry. So I'm the new Liberal Democrat candidate no longer councillor in Hanger Hill. I've lived in Hanger Hill for 20 years, so I'm really proud to represent my ward, and I'm looking forward to making it a better place to live. And I like to second the motion for improvements in Ealing Council should make in the next 100 days. Ward forums, I've never been to one because we don't have any anymore. There's no ward fund money either, which would be really nice. And I think there's no better forum for residents and councillors to get together and find little projects that they can do for their little bit of Ealing. I would like Hanger Hill Park to get a green flag. If we can use some ward money to do that, that'd be fantastic. So that would be a really good opportunity to do that. The other thing I would like is lighting, to be consulted on how the lighting is dimmed and where it's dimmed. If anyone lives where I live and gets the bus from Ealing Broadway and gets off at Hillcrest Road, Hillcrest and Hanger Lane, crosses the road and goes through Hanger Wood for 5 minutes at 4:30 in the afternoon in winter, it's dark. And it's dark 1 meter that way, 1 meter that way, and it's 5 minutes. and that's the closest bus stop to my house. And that's at 4:30 when the lights are sort of okay. Any later, and it's even worse. And I would like to see that brighter. And it's a big thing. And everybody that has not been to that bus stop, I made Caroline Pigeon come. Caroline Pigeon, Assembly member, chair, she was chair then of Transport, now she's vice chair. I made her walk the walk and I said, this is my bus stop. And if it rains, it's slippery as well because it's muddy. So there's stuff like that I would like to get fixed. And having lights that in that part especially would be really cool. I mean, would be really good. The other thing is I knocked on loads and loads of doors and I knocked on doors and I go, oh, you're the rubbish lady, which is not a greeting one really wants to have. But there it was. I was a rubbish lady because went on about fly tipping. Fly tipping today, I walked down the street and I got same street, 4 fly tipping instances. It's because we're off Hanger Lane, we're off the North Circular, we're off the A40. People just drive up and dump rubbish. And I don't know how, I mean, that council has to do something about, I know where the spots are, because every time I need a picture of fly tipping, I know where to go. So there must be a way that we can fix it so that there's no fly tipping there for me to go and get a picture. So
I just need to remind you of time.
Yeah, sorry, I'll shut up really quickly. And the one other thing I've got is TFL. A40, TFL, they're responsible and no one tells them that they're responsible. They don't even know that they're responsible for the verges. We need to tell them and we need to chase them and we need to make them, you know, that's one of our things is get third parties to take responsibility and they should. And I'll shut up now, I'll sit down.
Right, next up on my list, I've got Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and to Councillor Zizimos. Welcome to your place. I've got some great news for you. The Ward Forum money is there in the budget, all £750,000 of it that can be used by ward councillors over the next year. But of course, I'm sure you're certain that you will have read in our manifesto that not only have we committed to establish town forums for each and every one of our 7 towns, but we've also committed by the end of the administration to secure £2 million per year from community infrastructure levy and the tax that we're going to put on developers. But I have to say to Councillor Malcolm, I have some news for him. Councillor Malcolm believes that the people of Ealing have been ignored, and that's the reason why he is the leader of the opposition. I have to break it to him. The reason that he's the leader of the opposition is because the Tories have connived to keep a corrupt, contemptuous man who lies to the Queen in number 10 Downing Street. And had Boris Johnson not been the Prime Minister at the last election, certainly the quirk of geography that took place in 2022 would not have taken place. Because were it not for the quirk of geography that took place in 2022, they would not have one more seat than the Tories. But of course, you wouldn't be able to tell from that today, given that there's a third of their group missing, and I think every one of yours in attendance. Actually, we took a decision to put the Liberal Democrats sort of on that seat, not just because there's 6 seats, but also as a bit of a reminder, actually, that it was the Tories, actually, that got 25% of the vote. It was the Liberals that only got 15. They're not really the opposition of this borough. They are, but as Councillor Donnelly is so well known to say, they are but the temporary custodians of the opposition. As he always says, elections are final and mandates are finite. And I'm afraid the Liberal Democrats are but one by-election away from returning to their third-party status. And that's perhaps why rumour has it that at the forthcoming Liberal Democrat Party conference, the Liberal Democrat position on proportional representation is set to be abolished by the Ealing Liberal Democrat Party. Look, we take great exception to the words that are at the top of the Liberal Democrat motion, that following that because, of course, following the local elections, the Ealing Labour Party were elected to our largest ever group, the largest ever group of a political party in this borough with 59 councillors, with so many new and incredible people who I'm sure are going to be delivering their maiden speeches throughout the rest of this evening. We are proud to have stood on our record as an open, transparent, inclusive council that is so keen to make sure that we deliver with hope and energy and creativity the change that our borough needs for the better. And that is precisely why we brought forward as our first act, Councillor Stafford, as our first act, the investments that we made in London Living Wage for our care workers, in trees to preserve our environment, and in all of the other projects that you will start seeing being delivered over the course of this administration. You don't need to hear any more from me. I look forward to hearing your maiden speeches tonight, and let's see how this goes. Thank you.
Next up is Councillor Newstom. It's her maiden speech as well.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. As a newly elected Labour councillor for Hanwell Broadway, I am both proud and delighted to be making my maiden speech. I would like to begin by saying an enormous thank you to the residents of Hanwell Broadway for electing me. It's a privilege to represent this thriving community that works so hard to make our corner of Ealing such a brilliant place. Having spoken to thousands of local people, I know we're all passionately proud of and committed to Hanwell and West Ealing's unique and vibrant character. In the few short weeks since May 5th, our community has hosted both the Hanwell Hootie and the Hanwell Carnival. Brilliant events, both run entirely by local volunteers. And where there is need, the people of Hanwell Broadway step up. The many volunteers that make up community food groups who are helping tackle the shocking rise in food poverty, alongside our faith organisations, our community library, our environmental campaigners, and many more. The community spirit runs deep in Hanwell Broadway, and that means we will thrive and grow in the coming years. And of course, there are challenges. We're already working hard to fight antisocial behaviour and crime in the ward and to support people to get off the streets. And while there really are no easy solutions that will reverse years of Tory cuts to policing and vicious attack on supports for the most vulnerable, I believe we can make a difference, and I will prioritise safety on our streets. And while there are challenges, there's much to be proud of in the ward. The regeneration of the Greenman estate, providing high quality council housing for our community. The protection of our green spaces for the community, a commitment to active travel solutions to make our ward healthier and greener, introducing school streets so our children are safer. I would, of course, like to say thank you to my fellow Labour councillors in the ward for their generosity and trust, and we already make a great team. As a lifelong Labour member, I'm excited to be part of the largest Labour group Ealing Council has ever seen. And more than half of us are women. And finally, we see councillors on these benches that truly represent the diversity of our borough. Historic and important achievements we're right to be proud of. It makes me proud to be in the Labour Party. And while it's nice for us to have a change of scene on our opposition benches, let us not forget that the Liberal Democrats' somewhat limited success lies in people turning away from the Conservative Party under Boris Johnson. And let us not forget that the Conservative government are why we are suffering a spiralling cost of living crisis that they have ignored, soaring energy prices that they have ignored, a burgeoning mental health crisis for our young people that they have ignored. The list goes on. I would like to thank Liberal Democrats for highlighting in their motion for debate today that we've already started delivering on our election promises. Within days of the election, we announced 23 million in extra investment in lighting to make our streets safer, extra investment in trees and to support greener forms of travel in the borough, extra investment to make sure our streets are clean, extra investment to fight antisocial behaviour, burglary, violent crime and violence against women, and extra investment to start meeting the essential commitments made in the Race Equality Commission and tackle inequality in our borough once and for all. Thank you again to those in Hanwell Broadway who elected me. I look forward to continuing all the conversations I've begun with so many of you in the ward and to meeting the new residents we will welcome to the ward in the coming years. Our strength lies in our willingness to give everyone a hand up, and I could not be more excited to play a part in the future of Hanwell Broadway. I promise to be hopeful that we can change things for the better, to listen, to be creative, and to be open and to be innovative. Thank you for listening, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
You're on the dot there, Councillor Newsome, time-wise. Well done. So Councillor Conti, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will be supporting the Lib Dem motion this evening. So we had a bit of sense of deja vu when we were reading it. A number of these items could have been lifted directly out of our Ealing Conservative manifesto going into the election. So it's good to see that we had so much that we agreed on, which you wouldn't have thought reading some of the literature that went out during the local elections in Hanger Hill. But anyway, congratulations on Councillor Zizamos's maiden speech this evening. We hope the administration does take swift action on these areas, most importantly on personal safety, by improving street lighting in the borough. I know residents in Hanger Hill, whether it's on Mount Avenue or on the approach to North Ealing Station, to name just a few, are desperate for improved lighting. It was good to hear from Councillor Raza about that the report will be coming to Cabinet in September, and I hope that actually the rollout of those proposals that come in September will be swift, especially as we then enter into the winter months and ensuring that lighting is improved quickly for residents. We would have wanted to go further because along with street lighting, CCTV coverage needs to be improved in the borough, not only for crime, but to tackle fly tipping, especially in areas that in Hanger Hill that neighbour the neighbour Hanger Lane, whether that's on Twyford Abbey Road or Clovelly Crescent. One of the glaring omissions from this motion from the Lib Dems, however, was about tall buildings. I know they plastered on their literature over the campaign the tall building obsession, and they mentioned about the statement on tall buildings from the Labour group being electoral propaganda. But it's interesting that there was no mention in this about their priorities. It seems that they have created their own propaganda and now have swiftly forgotten about it after the election. Now, it was good news to hear about money coming forward for ward forums again, because I think that's a really good policy in order to be able for local communities to deliver on their projects moving forward. Now, as I said at the start, we will be supporting this motion this evening, and we hope that all of these policies will be moved forward swiftly in the months ahead. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Conti. Next up is a maiden speech from Councillor Hamidi.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to make my maiden speech as a councillor for Hamwell Broadway in this chamber. I would like to begin by thanking the residents of Hamwell Broadway for putting their faith and trust in me and my two great colleagues to represent them for the next 4 years. I am still trying to process that I am part of the largest group of Labour councillors in the history of Ealing, but I'm sure it will soon sink in. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody that supported me on my journey here, especially Brenda Sharma, Member of Parliament for Ealing Southall. He helped me believe in myself and had faith in me and my ambitions as a friend and as a mentor. Throughout my adult life, I have worked to serve the residents of Ealing. In my new role as councillor, I will continue to be a voice for everyone in Hamwell Broadway. Since being elected, I've had the privilege of meeting many organisations and people that make our area so special. They maintain Hamwell, make us strong, build ties between people and grow our community every day, month and year. They make it more than just a town, they make it a community. And when they speak with only admiration for Hamwell and aspiration for how it can grow and strengthen. I want to assure you that my next 4 years as a councillor will be spent working with them to improve and support the local community. That is what Hamwell Broadway voted for, what I was elected to do, and that is what this Labour Council is going to deliver. Because whatever the opposition may claim, Ealing residents saw through them and their political tactics. They voted for a Labour Council that is delivering for people, delivering 2,000 new electric vehicle charge points, delivering improved street lighting and investing in energy efficient technology, delivering greener streets and cleaner air for Ealing. The opposition don't deliver, they only contribute to hot air. Ealing and Hamwell Broadway have aspirations, they have the people and they have the commitment. As their councillor, I am here for them because Ealing Labour is on your side. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamidi. We're doing well. It was only 2 minutes. All right. Next up is another maiden speech is Councillor Mataza.
I begin with the name of God, who is very kind and merciful to all of us. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, for giving me the opportunity. I have been living in Ealing, and Ealing has been living in me for the last 2 decades. I live in Norwood Green, and my journey with Labour Party started in 1997 when I was living in Iceberg. But I joined Labour Party, and my commitment to the party has actually paid off when I was selected as a candidate by the Labour Party, Ealing Labour Party. I'm thankful to my local MPs, especially Virendra Sharma, and my leader, Peter Mason, who put trust in us. And I am thankful to the residents of the Norwood Green, who actually have elected 3 very, very energetic councillors, including myself. So this is a true reflection of the residents of Norwood Green. We have diversity, and 3 councillors actually represent it very well. Why I became a councillor? I have been working as a healthcare professional because when I was working in my clinic, one patient will come with a medical problem, but the 2 next clients will come with the socioeconomic problem. And I thought there must be something wrong somewhere. And now then I realize that the cost of living and austerity for the last decade or so has put patients even to come and beg for a prescription of paracetamol, which is, I think, very alarming, and we all have to think to do something about it. So I'm not sure whether this is the remit of this council, but I think we all have to work very hard to make sure that the change which this chamber has seen in recent election will be reflected in the next general election as well. I am very grateful for my wife and kids who have supported me to become a councillor. They were a pillar of my strength, and I'm also very thankful to John Martin, who is my fellow councillor, and Trip Sidhu. We have worked together, and we endure to continue to work together. Now, coming back to tonight's motion, I'm not sure whether there is any sense in it. However, I would like to ask Deputy Mayor to make sure that the motion wording is actually given by my worthy councillors. Look at it. It says, improvements Ealing Council should make in the first 100 days of this term. Following the local elections, it is clear residents across Ealing feel that Ealing Council has not listened to them over the last 4 years. Now, either this election result is wrong, or this motion has been written after a few pints of beer. Now, moving forward. Now, the second thing, which is said that, okay, reintroduce the ward forums with budget.
Up a bit.
Sorry?
We are over time, but carry on.
Okay, I'll just quickly, I can tell you that after second point, I said, I can't read it anymore. There is no cohesion in it. Look, consult all councillors about location where street lighting should be improved. Why don't you bring the proposals to the council? Why people have elected you? Bring the proposals to the council, and the council then will act on it. It is not the council job to go to you and ask. You bring the proposal, represent your areas, and okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I think the good doctor's describing some things already. Do you want to switch your mic, please? All right, next up is someone who's not on their maiden speech, is Councillor Johnson.
No, it's not my maiden speech. Can I congratulate all 4 of you who've made your maiden speeches? You were very good, and I think it shows that it'll be an interesting next 4 years. So thank you to all of you, and there'll be good fun. I must say that Councillor Malcolm is a very conscientious councillor. We all know that he turns up to cabinet. He always has done. He's a very conscientious person. He asks questions when he wants to know about things. And if he's found out the answer from an officer, he doesn't bother. But in the past, when he was the second party of opposition in Ealing, they didn't have to have motions very often. And they tended to be off the counter ones that they got from Liberal headquarters, which weren't terribly local. So I think they're going to have to work quite hard to do this every single council. And that's going to be quite difficult. So I'm sure that they'll all be working very hard at this. I congratulate the fact that they've now got a woman. It's not their first time. When I was elected, yes, when I was elected, there was a female councillor up in Ealing North. So they have had females before, but quite a long time ago. But no, we're pleased that they've now got two. I'm hoping they'll help Councillor Malcolm with the motions. Because obviously, I think many of us remember being in the Victoria Hall a few months ago when Councillor Costigan told us that the street lighting was all going to be on. I think their memories have got a bit, maybe they overdid it during the election. I think my colleague was quite right. They certainly did overdo it, I think, because you can see that people have listened to Labour. A gentleman rang me up this afternoon who's got financial problems. He wants me to help him get council tax support, etc. And those problems are all because the government is not all that sympathetic, we know, to people who've got genuine problems. But I know the Liberals will try very hard, but as we've been already told that their position is a bit iffy sometimes. They did have Councillor Bakaya a few terms ago, and then he disappeared and they were back to 4. They might be up to 6, but who knows what will happen an election next time. We all know a week in politics is a long time. I think if you must get Miss Pigeon to ask questions about TfL. She's in the right place to do that. You'll find that Westminster had fly tipping problems. Fly tipping problems is something that are all over the country and in Conservative authorities. And when I'm very pleased to hear that Westminster is now Labour, and good about that. Councillor Conti's always very conscientious and thoughtful, but I think he's going to have to work quite hard with Councillor Gallant and their little band, and we will wish them all the best. I mean, it must be very depressing having a leader like Boris Johnson. Unfortunately, people in the election in South Acton thought I was a relative, and despite the fact that they thought I was a relative, and I thought, oh my goodness, apparently I was told this by the staff there, but never mind, I'm not a relative, not at all. But I wish the Liberal opposition all the best, but I'm afraid they're going to have to do a bit more work and get reasonable motions, because there's no way that this is, as an ex-teacher, retired teacher, I think this would be D rather than A. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Well, okay, Councillor Gallant, you want to follow that?
Yeah, well, Councillor Johnson, thank you very much. And it's actually, by the way, it's gallant. I just want to establish that, and that's no problem at all. But it is gallant. Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor. We had a taste of the Lib Dem Grand Plan. I know I sound like Boris Johnson, by the way. We had a taste of the Lib Dem Grand Plan for Ealing at full council just before the elections, and I had that strange feeling I get sometimes when I recognise a tune that I've written and it pops up in somebody else's score, and I can't quite work out whether they're passing it off as theirs. Now, before I go on, by the way, I just wanted to say well done to everyone giving a maiden speech tonight. You know, it's good. It's not that hard. It's quite a conducive space. People are looking at you. It's going to get a bit harder when they start heckling at you, but you know, just shout loudly, okay? So what I wanted to say, most of the Lib Dem manifesto, frankly, was borrowed from us, from the Conservatives. It was quite clear. And when I look at tonight's motion, actually, I get that same feeling when I read that it's proposed that Ealing Council agree to consult all councillors with a capital C about locations where street lighting should be improved. And that was something I put to Cabinet, actually, on the 18th. And I remember it was taken up, and to be fair, portfolio holder actually agreed with that. It would be good to consult councillors because they really do know where the dark spots are. The proposals for us tonight are by and large good. It's actually vitally important Ealing's housing is safe, and annual reporting would seem to be the best way of monitoring fire risk assessments and other safety measures. And I really commend the council for putting itself forward and admitting that those faults were there, and getting this sorted out. What I do totally agree, an increase in tree numbers, yes, but that must be matched by an improvement in tree maintenance for the health of trees. We fully support the introduction of funded forums. I consider them the best platform for interface between residents and councillors, and we need to get more people attending them. And of course, they fund useful local projects like pocket gardens and small cinemas, where I live in Acton. Well, when it was, each ward actually contributed, and it was very good. The problem, of course, and this is where I'm getting a bit serious, the problem is that these plans were not at the forefront of the Lib Dem campaign, were they? It looked to me like it was focused almost exclusively on grabbing Conservative seats, and their literature, but not with their own measures. The literature focused on national government and used an interpretation of national events to, and I won't say the word I was going to say because I'm probably not allowed to say it, but to insult local Conservatives with words like criminality, and it's in print. Okay, and that is not okay. You will not see a Tory manifesto that talks about another party, because we know what we want to do. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we are inclined to support the recommendations in this motion. I'm not sure that anyone else is going to believe it.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, last speaker, and then I'm going to ask Councillor Malcolm to sum up. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I say well done to all the maiden speeches made today? Some were very entertaining. So, Mr. Sir, what I want to say is, look, I understand the Liberals are the new official opposition, but you're only one by-election away from not being the official opposition. And the reality of the situation is you've had a lot of a kicking tonight. So I'm not going to say what I wanted to say. All I would say is one of the first things you should think about is you represent the borough of Ealing, not Southfield, Hanger Hill, and a little bit of Ealing Common. Please make your remarks about all of Ealing. There's Greenford, there's Northolt, and you are the official opposition. And it would be helpful if you were not to just concentrate on your own little wards. That would be really important. I think this motion says we've done all of it. And I suppose you want it for your leaflets to say we suggested it first. Well, you can do that if you want. That's what Liberals always do. We suggested it, and therefore somebody copied us. But the reality is, look, the people of Ealing, every 4 years we go before them and we ask for a mandate to represent their views. And really, Councillor Mustazar was right. You must have been drunk when you thought the people of Ealing were telling us they didn't want a Labour administration, because we've got 59 councillors, the highest number ever in the history of the borough. And if that's not the residents telling you that they prefer a Labour administration and not a Liberal one, you do really need to go in a dark room and sit down and maybe redo the paper again as suggested. And you might get a C rather than a D next time. So just try. I know that the other opposition, the real opposition, because you have got higher amounts of votes in all of our wards, and we recognize that. But your central government, your Tory government is really letting you down. And it would be really helpful if you were to actually say that every now and again, to say that national policy has to change to support local councils, to support their residents, to manage this massive cost of living crisis, which is coming forward. We're anticipating many people coming forward in terms of not being able to pay rent, etc. So we are looking at a very, very difficult situation coming forward. And it would be helpful if members who have, shall we say, brothers in Parliament could talk to them and help us in terms of changing government policy, that really would be helpful. But I really don't want to kick you tonight. I feel sorry for you, so I'm going to sit down now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Malcolm, do you want to sum up?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank all those who've made their maiden speeches. I think that's 4 or 5 in this debate, which may not be a record, but it must be close. Councillor Munro's comments were slightly patronising, using the phrase little wards. No ward of the 24 in Ealing is little, as I would see it. The motion itself talks about all wards, every ward, and therefore, when you look at things like housing repairs, they affect every single ward, whether they're richer wards or poorer wards. Every ward has huge numbers of tenants, and we should deserve and respect those individuals and not use the language that I think he used there. On the opposite side of that coin, Councillor Johnson, she always makes me smile, even when she's attacking you. As a teacher, she knows how to do that. It's quite a skillful trick, but it always makes people smile. And I welcome her making her non-maiden speech. Councillor Conti referred to tall buildings. In a motion, you can only put so much in a particular motion. I would have to say that the Lib Dems for 2 years have called for this administration to bring forward a local plan so we can get the right housing in the right places. And we're the only party who've talked about a zero carbon status and how that can be done within this council. And we've been rebuffed many times over in this particular chamber. Housing policy is a motion in its own right, and I'm sure that will happen in the coming months. Councillor Zissimos referred to the need for the council and TfL to link better to clean up some of our streets, our underpasses, where at the edge of the borough, it's often a bit more trickier. And I think the council and TfL need to work better on some of those areas around the borough. And lastly, I'll just focus on ward forums. We may have a year of ward forums, but actually they've worked really well for about 10 years. And we need to make sure we have those moving forward because they really bring that link between residents associations and councillors and the council together. Many great projects have come about, and I think ward forums are something I would love to see them having more powers in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. I'm going to go straight to the vote on this motion now. Only those present in the room can vote on this item, so those online don't count. Can I see all those in favour of this motion? She's counting. Okay, and those against? I think I've stopped counting. Sorry if there's any abstentions. Let me just check. No. That motion's clearly lost. Right, thank you. Right, let's go on to the next item, which is the majority group motion for debate. There are quite a long list of speakers for this one. So experienced hands might want to keep to point. There's a number of maiden speeches as well. So Councillor Mason is going to move the motion first.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, and on that advice, all I was really going to say at the beginning of this motion is how fantastic a diverse group of councillors that we have now in this chamber. Of course, largely because of the Labour group having the largest ever group in our history, but also the most diverse group that we've ever had. It would be lovely if the Liberal Democrats and the Tories could catch up with that and ensure that we have a bit more diversity from their benches. That would be lovely to see. I think we're probably going to hear an awful lot more, aren't we, in this chamber over the next 4 years, probably about Hanger Hill, as we certainly did seeing the Tories and the Liberal Democrats face off against each other. I'm sure we'll hear some myopic words this evening, perhaps even from the person that's going to move the amendment immediately after I sit down. But I'm absolutely proud of the result that the people of Ealing gave to us, the mandate that we have to lead this borough. And I'm really absolutely pleased as punch and super proud of each and every one of the maiden speakers who are going to tell us a little bit about their lives, why they're here and what they're going to do for our borough over the next 4 years. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
I've just lost my pages for a second. Next up, I had Councillor Alexander with her maiden speech.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I would like to begin by thanking my predecessors for all their hard work and dedication towards Greenford Broadway residents during their time as councillors. Today, I'm proud to represent the ward where I grew up, alongside the fantastic Councillor Kelly and Councillor Cordier. Thank you both for supporting me over the last couple of months. Greenford Broadway are very, very lucky to have such passionate and dedicated councillors. There are many reasons why I stand in the council chamber today. I have seen firsthand the life-changing impact of social issues such as crime and poor mental health. The Black Lives Matter movement has an important place in my heart. My dad did not change the world, but I have always been an agent for change. Whilst I can't live in what could or should have happened, I wish my dad had some of the support outlined in our fantastic manifesto. There's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. I want to thank my village. I'm proud to stand here and say I'm from Grenadian and Dominican heritage. However, I'm also equally proud to say that I'm British. The Caribbean community in Ealing support one another, and we have a number of residents that have excelled in their crafts and give back to the local community. It is all the good in our great borough that I have personally experienced in my life that has facilitated the path of me being here giving this maiden speech. Ealing Labour are leading the way. Ealing Labour are practicing best practice. Mr. Deputy Mayor, on the recent anniversary of Jo Cott's death and also a reminder of her maiden speech, we are far more united and have far more in common with each other than things that divide us. The good people of Ealing, our loved communities, we are leading the way. So local Conservatives, if you do speak to Boris and he wants to know how to actually get more than one thing done, perhaps you can advise him of the amazing work of Ealing Labour's undertaking. Labour is the only party that truly believes in social mobility. However, whilst in opposition, the good work to address social mobility has remained stagnant by the current government. Ealing Labour are going to address the current government policy failings by leading the way. With our ambitious manifesto, we're going to smash the glass ceiling once and for all. We're going to deliver on the Ealing Race Equality Commission promises by establishing a civil leadership development programme for our underrepresented communities. Ealing Labour will be leading the way whilst waiting for the next general election and our next Labour government. Labour is the only party that truly believes in education. By delivering on our schools action plan to reduce the disproportionate exclusions of children from certain communities, we are giving all our young people the tools to thrive. For the people that look and sound like me, you are not defined by your set of circumstances. Dare to dream. Do not let anyone break your spirit and act on your dream. Know that Ealing Labour on your side, and because one day you might be in this very chamber delivering your own maiden speech. Mr. Deputy Mayor, I commend and second this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. That's said with very much passion. Well done. I've got Councillor Ball who's going to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. This motion is very short on specifics in quite a few areas. I'll confine myself to three tonight. One of particular interest to me is street lighting. During the election, many people, mostly women, raised with me the issue of how dark Ealing streets are due to the administration's current policy of dimming them to half brightness at night. There's a line about increasing women's safety by improving street lighting. Does that mean an end to streetlight dimming, as Councillor Johnson said, or just stopping dimming streetlights in certain places, or perhaps adding extra lights but still leaving them dimmed? And then the next line says, making this lighting greener and cheaper for council taxpayers by investing now in energy efficient technology and upgrading to energy saving LEDs. Well, this is 2022, the vast bulk of the council street lighting is already LED and has been for many years. That's why it's possible to dim it. So pretty much only heritage lamps use older technologies now. So what does this pledge mean? Does it mean replacing heritage lamps with modern LED lamp columns, which would be very unpopular, or modernising heritage columns to use LEDs, which would be better, but carry the risk of more streets becoming dim? Or does this mean upgrading the existing LED lamps to higher efficiency LEDs? It's all as murky as Ealing streets are on a winter's night. The Safer Ealing for Women listening exercise finished on February the 4th, over 4 months ago. Surely we should know by now what the administration is intending to do as a result. We welcome the reduction in the cost of bike hangers, but frankly, it was absurd that until this change, it was more expensive to park a bike than a car in some of Ealing streets. So how did Labour come up with the ridiculously high previous prices? We welcome the increase in electric car charging points, but the administration need to get the detail right. The current placement of chargers is very patchy. The administration need to use innovative solutions that some other councils use, such as charging bollards where heritage lampposts aren't suitable for charging, and also address the issue that Councillor Malcolm mentioned earlier, the wildly different rates for charging. Some chargers in this borough cost more than twice as much as others. Finally, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we welcome the amendment from the second opposition party on the huge allowance increases. Councillor Donnelly's defence earlier that massively increasing allowances wasn't technically the first thing the administration did, because the cabinet meeting was a few days earlier than the council meeting, isn't really going to cut any mustard with Ealing residents. The point is that the leader thinks that he deserves a 70% increase at a time of a cost of living crisis for everyone else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ball. I know you did allude to it, but I'm going to ask Councillor Gallant up.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And are you happy if I move the amendment now as well? That's great. Thank you. I actually rise to propose our amendment to the Labour motion, and you'll read it, but I'll read it out again. This council further notes that this Labour administration's first priority has been to pay themselves extra allowances over and above those agreed in March of this year. And that is to be inserted as paragraph 2. So, you know, if I look at the Labour motion, I note they're keen to implement their manifesto pledges, and there they are. I'm reading through them at one point. I thought I actually was reading the Conservative manifesto again. Yes, extra 50,000 trees, that was in our manifesto, 2,000 more electric charging points, making public spaces safer by improved street lighting, bringing communities together to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. And who's going to argue with that? My argument is about an element that was specifically excluded from the measures listed here. And of course, this was Labour's clear intention to massively increase councillor allowances. It wasn't part of the manifesto. It wasn't part of the original 2022-2023 budgets. And despite entreaty from both opposition parties, because I was at Cabinet on the 8th of May, it was not discussed at Cabinet on the 18th of May. No. It was introduced at the mayor-making ceremony on the 24th of May, without debate, without scrutiny, without a whiff of consensus. And these were big changes. Standard allowance raised by 2,300. The cabinet special allowance raised from 16,000 to 32, I'll be very precise, to 39,060. And the leaders' special allowance raised from 32,100 to 54,860. And this at a time of financial insecurity, where inflation may top 15%, where families are paying over £100 for a tank of diesel. Home energy costs are absolutely skyrocketing, as we know. And I'm going to say now that I'm thankful that a Conservative government is putting in a host of measures to help households in need. A whole host, because that's what we do. Now, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I know they'll say, I know they're going to say they were just following the recommendations of the London report. But the picture is much more complicated. You just check a handful of councils, because I've done so, and you'll see a wide and incomparable scale of special allowances. It's actually very difficult to rank one council against another council. And a complete new measurement, and this is important, was brought in to scale cabinet remuneration against the hours worked outside the council. And I shudder to think how that scale is going to be verified, how you're going to measure how many hours somebody is working outside the council. So what I'm saying is this, and what we're saying is this: the rises in council allowances was a major change. It wasn't announced before the elections. It should have been in this motion. And I know that colleagues right across the council are going to feel the same way and adopt our amendments so that residents can trust Labour about its future intentions. And I want to move this amendment, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor, I'm just wondering if we're going to miss Councillor Sumner anymore, you know, after that. And, but actually, do you have a seconder for this motion? Well, actually, I was going to ask you to speak later.
Okay, fine. In which case, I second the motion and speak later. Thank
you. Next up, I have another maiden speech. Where's she gone? Councillor Blacklini.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It's my great honor to be standing here proudly representing the newly named ward of Pittshanger. Thank you to the people of Pittshanger for electing my wonderful colleagues, Councillor Weston Nijar and myself. It's a historic vote, not only in Pittshanger, but across the borough, with an unprecedented fourth Labour term. And now for the first time, over half of the administration party is women and more councillors from different ethnic backgrounds than ever before. Each one of us brings our own lived experiences that defines who we are, what we strive to achieve, and why we sit here in this chamber. As a child growing up in Lebanon, it struck me that this was a lack of justice and social mobility. When I looked at role models, there were no female MPs or leaders, even in a liberal country. This drove me to have a passion to study law and want to make a positive difference in the world and stand up for women's rights. I arrived in the UK over 22 years ago, made Ealing my home, brought up my children here, and this has made me passionate about education and ensuring our community is a safe place to grow up in. That's why when I was knocking on the doors of Pittshanger Ward, and I don't think there was a door we left unlocked, it was so warming to hear that the issues people cared about were the ones that I cared about, the ones this Labour Party cared about. And more than that, there were the issues that this Labour Party had put together a plan and a vision for a brighter future. The people of Pittshanger wanted a party who had a prudent but ambitious, The people of Pittshanger wanted a party who had a prudent but ambitious plan for the future of Grinnell, a party that was going to tackle head-on the challenges of the cost of living crisis by keeping council tax low and supporting residents into well-paid jobs. The people of Pittshanger wanted a party that would put money where its mouth was on tackling antisocial behavior, crime and violence against women. The people of Pittshanger wanted a party that cared passionately enough about the future of our environment to actually deliver the difference. The people of Pittshanger wanted a party that cared about the future of our children and ensuring they get the right start in life. It was clear in all of those conversations that Ealing Labour was on their side. And that was more than evident in the election results as they were counted on that Thursday night. Because only Ealing Labour promised to deliver a new state-of-the-art leisure centre at Grinnell. Only Ealing Labour promised 10,000 new jobs for our residents. Only Ealing Labour promised to invest £13 million in fighting antisocial behaviour, burglary, violent crime and violence against women. Only Ealing Labour promised to create 10 new parks, not send any of our waste to landfill, plant 50,000 trees and more to regrow, rewild and recycle than any other party. Only Ealing Labour promised to ensure every child in this borough continues to get access to good and sustainable schools. Ealing Labour is on their side. On the one hand, the people of Pittshanger wanted a party committed to being open, inclusive and transparent. On the other hand, there was a prime minister who just wanted to have a party. A man who was the exact opposite of what we promised, that even the local conservatives saw as a total lying liability, lacking honesty and lacking vision. And that is why they were punished so severely by the people across the borough. Mr. Deputy Mayor, the people of Pittshanger and Ealing have spoken. Ealing Labour is on the side of our residents, and we stand here ready to deliver on the commitments made in our manifesto. Mr. Deputy Mayor, I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Your reference to Pittshanger Park, is there a party in the park or something this weekend?
Yes.
There is, okay. Right. By the way, part of our new income generation in Mayor's Office, I charge for photos if anyone's interested. By the way. We'll go to the Mayor's Fund and refreshments afterwards. Next up is another maiden speech. I'm proud to say is having slightly ticked her off earlier. I'm feeling quite sheepish now. Councillor Quanta.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First, I thank God. I thank Peter for having trust in me. And I also thank Paul Conlon, my predecessor, for his invaluable contribution and commitment to Walpole ward residents during the time as a councillor. I will build on his legacy to work hard as well to serve Walpole constituents, which I'm immensely proud to represent with my fabulous colleagues, Councillor Rye and Councillor Shaw, who I also thank for your support. It is indeed an honour to have been elected as a councillor decisively in Walpole. In 1988, I made history in being the council's woman of African descent to be teaching A-level sociology at Ealing Green Adult Education Centre, also in Walpole Ward. Never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that 34 years later, I would make history again in being the ward's first African descended woman to be elected a councillor. I thank voters too for putting their trust in me, and I shall not take any votes for granted, nor will I forget my grassroots struggles, past and present, that will continue to primarily shape how I connect with residents. As the 74th anniversary of Windrush looms tomorrow, 22nd of June, when around 500 migrants left the Caribbean from Trinidad, Jamaica, Mexico, including Polish Jews, I hasten to add, refugees who fled Nazi Germany and relocated in Mexico, moved to another place, to the UK, on the invitation of the Labour MP, Clement Attlee, PM, I stand here to pay homage to the Windrush generation who helped to build Britain back better after the Second World War. My father, naval officer with the Ghanaian Black Star Line, and my mother, who trained to be a nurse at the old King Edward Hospital, now gone, in Ealing, were part of the Windrush generation, the African strand, who have contributed to Ealing's ethnically diverse, rich history. They experienced raw racism, no Blacks, no dogs, no Irish. We have come so far and yet not far enough. Events relating to the Grenfell tragedy, the murder of George Floyd in the US, the hostile environment of the Windrush generation, Brexit, COVID-19 pandemic, now the cost of living crisis, have exposed serious racial and class inequities, amongst other inequities, that we need to fix, and Ealing Labour is going to fix. And that I'm very proud of. So basically, within that, I'm going to point out that I'm very proud that Ealing Labour is delivering on the Race Equality Commission promises by establishing a civic leadership development programme for underrepresented communities and delivering our school action plan to reduce the disproportionate exclusions of children from certain racialised communities underserved by the education system. Also, I need to reaffirm that this council, Labour administration, thanks residents for electing Ealing Labour for its historic fourth term in office and for delivering 59 councillors, the largest ever group of councillors in Ealing Council's history. Ealing Labour is proud that over 50% of our councillors are women, and our councillors are more accurately reflect the cosmopolitan Ealing, in particular the communities that comprise its 7 towns. The council also acknowledges that the Labour administration will get working straight away on residents' priorities, as well as residents signposted, as well as what residents signposted must radically change for the better. Ealing Labour has already agreed to earmark 23 million to begin delivering on our manifesto pledges, which are as follows. Yes, Ealing is going to be Labour increasing pay rates for home care workers as part of a staged and deliverable plan to guarantee that every care worker contracted by Ealing and supporting older people is finally paid the London wage. Yes, Ealing Labour is planting an extra 50,000 trees, doubling the number of trees planted each year and increasing the proportion of the borough covered by trees canopies to 25%. Yes, Ealing Labour is supporting green and active travel by increasing the number of bike hangers to at least 150 and reducing the cost of bike hanger from £6 to 70 pence, the equivalent cost of the space taken on the road by the safely stored bike. Yes, Ealing Labour is increasing the number of electric charging points to at least 2,000. And I've just got to finish, almost, thank you. Following our recent public engagement with women, yes, we're making public spaces safer for all, improving street lighting. And what, two more, making this, yes, lighting greener and cheaper for council taxpayers by investing now in energy efficient technology and upgrading to energy saving LEDs. And finally, yes, bringing our communities together to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. And I was part of that. You might have seen me on stage. And so much more we're doing. Ealing Council reaffirms the Labour administration's 3 priorities that remain unchanged: creating good jobs, fighting inequality, tackling the climate crisis. You know what? We're open, we're transparent, we're inclusive council, always working. And I'm proud to be part of Labour.
Okay, all right. So, Councillor Stafford, I may have to be strict with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And I won't in any way attempt to follow that. It was quite brilliant. I first want to say congratulations, obviously, to Councillor Mason and the Labour group for their victory at the election. And also for what I thought was a very solid analysis of the results from Councillor Mason earlier on. I agree with him completely on that. Perhaps he can come and talk to some of my members as well and tell them it's not all my fault. I also want to thank the Hanger Hill residents who did re-elect me and my colleague Councillor Conti. That we were elected in such difficult national circumstances, I think pays tribute to the work that we and my colleague Nigel Sumner did in the ward. And it would be remiss of me, I think, not to pay tribute to Nigel for all the hard work he did as a councillor for 28 years in this borough. He will be missed by us on this side. And I think if people are honest across the chamber, he will be missed by us all. I want to congratulate everyone who's made their maiden speech so far and those who are about to. Just to pick out 2, just because I can't talk about them all, the 2 who actually live in my ward, Councillor Zizimos and Councillor Baclini. Well done on your maiden speeches. It's actually interesting that I've spoken more to Councillor Baclini during the election campaign than I did to Councillor Zizimos, despite my best efforts to engage her. In fact, the first thing I had with her was on election night when I went and I said, Councillor Zizimos, congratulations on your election. I look forward to working with you. And the first 2 words she said to me, we'll see. So I'm looking forward to this relationship ongoing.
Brilliant. I love that.
Well, I rise to obviously second our amendment. And I think the leader of the council and the Labour group have always talked about being an honest and open and transparent council. And I think to be open and honest and transparent, you need to be open and transparent about all the things. And I think the fact that Labour has increased the allowances by such a colossal amount, especially for the leaders, 70%, 70% more than he was getting the day before the election. I don't quite know what extra work he's taken on in that 12 minutes between when he was the leader of the previous administration and the leader of this one, but apparently it deserves a 70% increase. Now, it might be defensible, as we've heard. If it's defensible, keep it in the motion so that residents can see it. Because if you vote against it, residents will decide that you're not able to defend your position on this. And that's, I think, what I would say to all of the new councillors, especially those making their maiden speeches tonight. If when you're knocking on the doorstep and a resident tells you how difficult they're finding it, that they can't pay their bills, they're finding their council tax too much, that they can't do the things they used to do because of inflation, because of the war in Ukraine, because of COVID. And then can you really look them in the eye and say, the way we decided to deal with that was to increase our allowances by such an astronomical amount. Now, maybe you can, but I think if you can, and you should keep it on this motion, because it's important that residents know what's going on. Now, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, sorry, I keep trying to promote you, and I'm sure it will be brilliant next year.
No doubt.
And absolutely. What I would say is the electorate have spoken, as you said, and they've given me the opportunity, whereas previously I had to be talking about the borough, where I can be a little bit more parochial now. So I will talk about Hanger Hill just very briefly, looking at the Labour motion. The key thing for me is that despite people have a very rarefied view of Hanger Hill, they think it's very affluent and very green, and in parts it is. But also there are areas of real deprivation and real problems, I think, with the environment, with the pollution. Having the North Circular and the A40 and obviously the gyratory in the ward means that we have some real problems with pollution. So I would hope that some of those 50,000 trees, some of the measures that the council is going to take, welcome measures to improve the environment, are focused around those pollution hotspots in my ward. So, Mr. Mayor, in conclusion, yes, the Conservative group is down, but it's not out. As you said, 25% of the electorate who voted for us. It's nearly 67,000 people in this borough. So we will continue with our mandate to hold this administration to account, and we look forward to doing so over the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stafford. Right, I'm conscious of time. We've still got about 6 people on the list, including, I think, 1, 2, 3 maiden speeches. So next one up is Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Good evening all. It is a great honour and privilege to have been elected as councillor for Dormers Wells Ward. Firstly, I would like to thank all the residents who put their faith in me when deciding who to vote for. Secondly, I would like to thank the late predecessor Tajinder Dami for his loyalty, dedication, hard work to this council and the residents of the Dormers Wells Ward. I would also like to thank all the council employees who have worked so hard during the pandemic to make sure vital services were carried out and who went over and beyond their duties in contacting residents and making sure their needs were met. I listened to employee experiences and felt it necessary to commend their selfless hard work and professional dedication. In 2015, as I completed my legal practice course and was training to become a full-time solicitor, life changed. Life had another beautiful journey planned for me, being a full-time mother, and I was blessed with 2 beautiful children. When my daughter was born, the Tory Council were closing children's centres down. These centres helped me to meet other parents, socialise my own child and pick up valuable information. I couldn't understand how a policy could endorse to close such a vital service. Becoming a parent doesn't come with a manual. Parents need help and support. This is what drove my passion for children's services. I have worked in schools and I knew I had to fight for the children's futures, especially those who are disadvantaged and vulnerable. That is why I backed to fight for inequality. I am happy to know we are investing £500,000 to understand and prevent the disproportionality, high number of exclusions from school from some of our communities, working with teachers, parents and mentors to ensure that every child gets a fair start. We are in the middle of a cost of living crisis, so it's important for all of us to support well-paid jobs and ensure our residents have access to decent living incomes and that small businesses have the space to thrive. We pledge to secure 10,000 new jobs, keep council tax low and protect the most vulnerable. Around a third of working age people in Ealing earn less than the London living wage. My ward has the lowest average income of 21,000. This left behind community needs support to thrive. I am passionate about the environment and recently attended an event hosted by Trees for Cities. I was proud to tell organisers of the event our pledges to tackle the climate crisis, planting 50,000 more trees, increasing biodiversity by regrowing, rewilding our borough. Clean air is important and I fully support the alternative to the car and welcome more cycle lanes and park run activities to embed these cultural habits. Studies have shown connecting with nature could be one of the best antidotes to mental health problems. Let us build Ealing's green canopies. If you need a reminder, just look up at the Ealing Council logo. To become a councillor in the Queen's 70th year of her Platinum Jubilee is very special indeed. Not only have we celebrated a triumphant Labour win of 59 councillors, of half of which are women, and a reflection of our diverse borough, we have provided grants for 150 street parties. These were proper parties, not misfiring Partygate parties, that took place over the Jubilee weekend. The pandemic created isolation and misery. The Jubilee parties held across Ealing streets created social cohesiveness, fun and pleasure. The party I attended in Southall felt like a huge family get-together where no one was left out. I will support and encourage our new initiative of Play Streets, as I have seen firsthand how inspiring it can be. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would like to give my full support of this motion. The residents across Ealing 7 towns will be able to trust in a council that is open, transparent and inclusive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done. Next up is another maiden speech. So it's Councillor Healy.
Oh, this one's not working. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I am honoured and delighted to stand before you as a new elected councillor for this outstanding borough and to represent the good people of North Acton. I would like to pay tribute to my former councillors, Dr. Abdullahi Guled and Sarah Rooney, for their long service, dedication and achievement across the borough. Mr. Deputy Mayor, my parents came to Ealing from Somalia in the mid-80s. My father sought political asylum, became a bus driver, worked 72 hours so he can give me and my siblings a better life. The sacrifice my father has made inspired me to make a difference in my Ealing and my community. I decided to become a teacher, work in the education sector for over 14 years now. I worked as a speech and language therapist in Ealing Children's Services. I worked as a special educational needs with just children with disabilities, early SEN advisor. And the reason why I decided to choose a career in education was to empower and motivate young people who struggled like I did in school. Mr. Deputy Mayor, after years of flirting with the idea of becoming a councillor, I realised this is the best platform I can use to make a difference, achieve changes, and improve the people's lives. I am delighted and I'm extremely honoured to have been elected, all the residents in North Acton and every Ealing resident to have an equal access to high quality services. I want the voices of our underrepresented communities, let's not forget underrepresented communities, to be heard in every corridor of power. And I will open the doors to the decision makers, to those who need to be listened to. And that is why the Civic Leadership Programme will offer Ealing's diverse communities a chance to step into leading roles, and that is so important to me. Education is a massive part of my own journey. I strongly believe every child matters. And I'll say that again for those who are not listening. Every child matters, regardless of their background. I am extremely concerned that many of our Ealing children do not get the education they deserve. And this is because many children are excluded unfairly from the mainstream education and are deprived of the chance to reach their full potential. I aim to work with Councillor Cam Nagpal, Ealing officers, and School Forum to address these issues. I believe we need a healthy, child-centered environment that enriches our borough's brilliant diversity. I will end with this. As Edward Hill eloquently stated, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is a progress, but working together is a success. We should work together for greater good, and I aim for success. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. That's the kind of passion we want to hear in this chamber as well going forward. All right, we're on a bit of an act and roll here. Councillor Anderson, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, from one Lutonian to another. Thank you for making
You're
allowing
from
me-
Dunstable, though.
Well, let's not quibble on details. No, I stand here humbled and deeply grateful to the people of South Acton, the trust that they have placed in me to serve them for the next 4 years. Be they in Acton Gardens or Poets Corner, I say simply to them, thank you. I also want to thank my colleagues in the Labour group, particularly my ward colleagues, Councillor Johnson and Blacker, for the warm welcome and support they have given me over since I began my term. I am so proud to join the most diverse council chamber that we've ever seen in Ealing. A Labour group which, under Councillor Mason's fresh leadership, has not only delivered a historic 4-term Labour administration, something that has never been done by any party in our borough's history, but has more women councillors, more councillors of African and Caribbean heritage, and more young councillors than ever before. A council chamber that looks like Ealing. It illustrates. I am delighted to support and speak in favour of the motion. It illustrates that despite the many economic and social challenges that we have, while I have never been more optimistic that our boroughs, their best days lie ahead, because I understand how Labour administrations, be they at the local level or the national level, can work with residents and communities to help them lead better lives. Like many in this borough, I too grew up in a council flat. My mum brought me up alone, and she instilled into me 2 values of honesty and hard work, disciplines that I hope serve me well serving the people of South Acton. But getting by on a low income, times could be tough, and it often felt like it was us against the world, as it does for too many families in South Acton. But it was thanks to the actions of a Labour government, minimum wage, tax credits, record investment in schools, that I was able to be part of a legacy, which included, among many other things, being one of the 1 million children lifted out of poverty. And that's why I'm delighted that our Ealing Council has committed to making sure that all care workers contracted by Ealing are finally paid a London living wage, because every worker and their family deserve the respect and the security that a fair day's pay or a fair day's work brings. And Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'm as proud of my Jamaican heritage as I am of my English heritage. And as a former member of the Ealing Race Equality Commission, it would be remiss of me not to also hugely welcome the council's commitment to working with our schools to reduce the disproportionate rate of exclusion of certain groups, particularly Black Caribbean boys. And I want to thank Councillors Maiden and Rather for the resolve and determination that they have both shown in wanting to implement the Commission's recommendations or demands. Mr. Deputy Mayor, this motion is proof that Ealing Labour is only just getting started in delivering on the people's priorities, of creating good jobs and fighting and tackling inequality wherever we find it. For my part, I will strive to ensure that during the many debates that I'm sure we're going to have in the coming months and years, to make sure that my own contributions are always constructive and, where possible, friendly, so that together we can all build a better tomorrow for everybody in Ealing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll always welcome another Lutonian, even if you're from Dunstable. That's a joke about Bedfordshire, by the way.
Very, very.
Councillor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to move that the Labour group would raise the guillotine.
We have 14.
Please. So we need 14 other members to stand up. I think we've got them, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got 3 more speakers actually on this motion anyway. But so next up, continuing the Acton theme, is Councillor Hashani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It is my honour to take my seat as a new Labour councillor for North Acton. Acton is my home. It's a beautiful town with a vibrant mix of cultures, of ethnicities, of talents and demographics. I'm especially proud of the open and welcoming spirit of Acton, We saw this spring to action during the COVID-19 pandemic. As the lockdowns kept us apart, Acton stepped up to support each other, organising through WhatsApp groups. We distributed food parcels, organised phone-ins to support those suffering from loneliness. And when it came to it, we supported the local and national effort as volunteers of the vaccine rollout, a Herculean effort that I too was very happy to put in my shifts in for. Acton stepped up when things got tough. And recently, as the horrific invasion of Ukraine unfolded, Acton's also stepped up and offered a home for Ukrainian refugees, with many signing up to the Homes for Ukraine scheme. Now, in 1999, as a young child, I too was in a similar situation to many of the kids that we're seeing on TV. I was forced to leave my home in Kosovo and forced to start a new life as a refugee here in the UK. It was a generous, spirited Labour government, the spirit of Acton, of Ealing, and of Britain that welcomed my family and I here. And it was through the support of social housing, free school meals, and a good education that led me to where I am today, a proud and deeply committed public servant, determined to do all I can to serve my community. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave it up to you to decide and make up your mind on how this contrasts with today's government policy on Rwanda. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's my pleasure to make my maiden speech on this particular motion. This motion really encapsulates what Labour can do in power. Action on solving the home care crisis by paying workers a decent wage. Action on climate change by planting an extra 50,000 trees and bringing in cycling infrastructure. And action on access and inclusion, including by implementing the Ealing Race Equality Commission and ensuring street lighting is improved so women feel safe on our streets. Now, these are the priorities of the people of Acton, of the people of the borough of Ealing, and I wholeheartedly support the motion, and I will work with my colleagues to implement these actions on behalf of the communities we serve. Now, during the campaign, we on this side stood on a platform that we're on your side. But that wasn't just for the 6 weeks. I know that that mantra will carry us through this administration and beyond. So with that, I just want to say thank you, and I look forward to working hard for North Acton in the months and years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Those voices of young Acton, you know, I was the future once. Right, the final two speakers I've got is Councillor Nagpal. Oh, sorry. Apologies, maiden speech. It didn't say maiden speech on it, just quite confused. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I am delighted to be giving my maiden speech this evening. I would like to start by thanking the wonderful residents of Northfield Ward. To those residents who voted for me and put their trust in me, thank you. To those residents who didn't vote for me, I look forward to working with you too and proving to you that the Labour Party is the only party worth voting for. Mr. Deputy Mayor, it's wonderful that Northfield Ward now has 3 Labour councillors, and I am truly delighted to be elected alongside Councillor Driscoll and Councillor Kingston. I have lived in Ealing all my life. I was born here, attended local schools and college here. I was even employed here by a small business and by West London College before I started my own business. So when the opportunity to serve the people of Ealing came along, I had to grab it with both hands. Perhaps one of the most wonderful parts of being elected at this point in history is that I am part of the statistic that for the first time ever, 50% of the councillors in the Labour group are women. I think the other parties in this chamber should take a leaf out of Ealing Labour's book. Mr. Deputy Mayor, the residents of Ealing have elected the Labour Party to a historic 4th term in office. We have a fantastic manifesto that we took to the people of Ealing. And when I spoke to the people of Northfield on the doorstep about our plans, residents were delighted to hear about how ambitious we are for Ealing. I was very proud to stand on this manifesto, and I look forward to delivering for the people of Northfield. Mr. Deputy Mayor, I am very passionate about green issues. I spent much time during the election campaign discussing green issues on the doorstep with residents. I was very proud to talk about our green agenda. Residents were very excited to hear about our plans to plant another 50,000 trees, and that we'll be working towards increasing our tree canopy cover by 25%. Residents were also very interested in Ealing Labour's plan to provide 2,000 electric vehicle charging points, particularly at a time when petrol prices are at the highest they have ever been, and climate change demands that we make positive changes today for a brighter and better tomorrow. Something Ealing Labour is clearly invested in. Residents in Northfield were delighted to hear about the 10 new parks and open spaces that we will be creating, and that we will be giving back to nature a fantastic 800,000 square meters, which is the same as 130 football pitches, through rewilding and reintroducing wildlife. This was music to the ears of both myself and Northfield residents, who really enjoy green spaces and are looking forward to enjoying the 10 new parks and open spaces that we will create. As a lover of animals and wildlife, I am particularly excited about the beavers we might be seeing making an appearance in our borough very soon. Mr. Deputy Mayor, I run a successful business, so lastly, I want to speak about Labour's plans to enable more small and medium-sized businesses to start up a business in our borough. This will be through securing more affordable workspace across our 7 towns, launch of a creative enterprise zone for Acton, an innovation district for Greenford, and launch of Southall Manor House as a centre for business incubation. I know firsthand how difficult it is to start a business, and now in the world we live in post-COVID, to have this sort of vision and support from your local Labour council is just fantastic. I am delighted to be one of 59 Labour councillors in this chamber. The people of Ealing have voted us in for a historic 4th term. They know which party is on their side. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and well done everybody who's given the maiden speeches tonight. So I'll leave it to Councillor Mason now to sum up the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and it's possibly impossible for me to follow what have been some incredible contributions by new councillors to this council chamber and to this meeting. I hope you'll forgive me for straying into the past motion to congratulate Councillor Newstub on your maiden speech. That community spirit of Hanwell is something that I know that we all love, and I love it particularly, as you know, having represented Hanwell previously. And I know that you're going to bring that spirit and passion for delivering for the people of Hanwell Broadway. So it's great to have you with us. Councillor Hamidi, we are a team, aren't we? And you've been part of that Ealing Labour team and that Ealing Labour family for such a long time already. And we know that you're going to do Hanwell Broadway proud, but also Southall proud, and all of our borough very, very proud. Councillor Dr. Murtaza, our resident GP, he's already issuing scripts. He absolutely isn't, the General Council. He's not doing them, honestly. But, you know, in the service of our borough as a GP is one, but as you rightly point out, so much of what our medical professionals have to do in the modern era is to support so many to access the services that they need and all of the social problems that they do face. Councillor Alexander, I'm just so pleased that you're here. I know that this journey has not been easy, right? And there are an awful lot of proud people, family and friends, who are so delighted to see you sitting where you are, as I'm sure every single person in this chamber is. Councillor Bucklini, telling the story that I think just speaks and resonates with so many people in our borough, but also in this chamber, of a story of migration under difficult circumstances, of integration into our society, but now also representation too. And you will be a symbol for people in your community and also beyond about the glass ceilings that can be broken. Councillor Conser, a kindred spirit, and it's been so wonderful to get to know you over the course of this campaign. And the energy to which you will bring to this chamber that will be so fantastically and fundamentally encapsulated by the quote that you gave, be the change that you want to see in the world. And I know that you will be that change that you will deliver in this world. Councillor Baines, you know, Hillingdon's loss, Ealing's gain. You bring a kind heart and compassion to these proceedings, to the conversations that we have had, and I know that you will deliver to this borough too. Councillor Haley. I don't know if anybody knows, but Councillor Haley is I think I'm busy. She's probably like the most busiest person I honestly know. And she does that with bags of resilience and strength that I think every one of us saw within this chamber. And you know, Acton doesn't know what they're about to get, but they're going to get something great. They're going to get something great. Councillor Anderson, that optimism I'm sure will serve you well. The best days are absolutely ahead of us. And from one council estate kid to another, yours on too. Councillor Hashani, you're right. Acton always does step up in really difficult circumstances and difficult times, but you will also step up for Acton, and I'm sure you will do them proud. And Councillor Nagpal, you are amongst friends. You're also amongst family, the Ealing Labour family. We know that spirit of enterprise and hard work that you brought to this campaign and to Northfields is absolutely going to be replicated across the rest of the council. We have such a strong team. We have such a diverse team. I know that we talk about it a lot, but it's really important. As we said at the last council meeting, as we continue to say, we have to reflect the people that we seek to represent. They need to see people who share their lives and their experiences and their communities and connect to them to understand the challenges that we know that we all face together, and we will face them together. We said very clearly at the outset of this election that we would be on the side of our residents, that we would stand up for them in difficult circumstances, but that we would do that with a spirit of hope, of creativity, but also the energy to know that we can change our borough for the better. We are on the side of the people of this borough, and I really look forward to seeing the contributions that each and every one of you make over the 4 years ahead. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I summarise the motion and thank you, and thank everybody for their maiden speeches.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mason. Before we actually vote on that motion, there is actually an amendment. So we do have to vote on the amendment first of all. So can I see everybody in favour of the amendment first? Okay, everybody against? Yep, I think it's fair to say that amendment's lost. Now I can take the vote on the motion. So all those in favour of the motion, please. And all those against? Just checking, there's no abstentions. Are you abstending? Okay. Okay, all right, thank you. So that motion, the substantive motion is carried. Thank you very much for your patience. Now, we're going to get on to the final items, which might get a bit complex here. Is item 11 is changes to the Constitution.
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I move the report, but I also move the amendment to the report to say thank you to our interim chief executive, Paul Martin, for his hard work, and perhaps we'll say something in the parlour after this meeting.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I don't see how this is an amendment to the report we have in front of us. It's not on the same subject at all.
Item 11.
It's an amendment to the cover report, and the amendment's been accepted by the monitoring officer. So,
Can you tell me how it relates to the report?
We're asking the monitoring officer.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, if the whip of the opposition wants to be so mean-spirited as to not allow an amendment to a motion to thank a public official for their determined work over the last 6 months to this council, then by all means, let's make an issue of this. But we're congratulating and thanking the interim head of paid service for his service to this borough. And I would hope that he could, in the spirit of that, accept the amendment.
I'm not. Should move to the vote. Okay. What's your point, Councillor? Want to move your amendment? If it's okay, do you want to move your amendment then?
So I'll move it formally.
Okay, who's seconding it? Okay, can we just vote on that amendment first? Okay, all those in favour of that amendment? Okay, and all those against? Okay, right, so that amendment's lost. So in terms of the motion without notice, so that's been moved. Can we vote on that motion? All those in favour? This is the motion to thank the chief executive. Yeah, okay, all right. Anyone against? You're popular, Paul. I'm united the council. Oh, he's leaving and he's just united all of us. Well done. Thank you very much. So, okay, so that motion is carried and the changes of that item 11 is carried as well. Okay. Substantive. Oh, we've got to vote on the substantive bit. Okay, can we now vote on the substantive motions? Apologies. Are we all in favour of the substantive motion? Okay, all those against? Okay, that is carried. Okay. Okay, the meeting's not finished yet, Councillor Ball, but you can argue over refreshments. There are sandwiches, but don't throw them. Item 12, appointment to committees and outside bodies. We agreed on that list that's been circulated. Thank you very much. Item 13, urgent key decisions exempt from the calling. Are we to be noted, I think. And then just to finally say the date of next meeting, well, hopefully the mayor will be back then. And that will take place on 26th of July. So have a good evening. Yeah, we have got refreshments. I think there was a vegan option. Where's our vegan councillor? There you go, as well. Thank you very much.